there was suspicious that how they could come up with a number like that, and certainly the suggestion that that number would be doubled.
Fine. And then you passed that on to the minister. You passed on an incorrect number to the minister, didn't you?
I did not do that, no.
The minister, the Solicitor General.
The
Did you see the minister's statement?
We're talking about two separate events here, sir.
Okay, let's move to the second one then, if you want to think that it's a second event. Did you pass on the number to the minister?
Please, let's to ask questions. Don't turn things around, please. Be fair to this witness.
So the video call, when I met with Chief Soley and he talked about having his team go away, that date was February. You have to help me, Counselor, on the date that video call.
Honey, shut up.
He just mentioned the date. Didn't recall the date. So
I had moved on to the statement that the minister made.
Okay, so irregardless of
I'm
the
happy
date.
to go back if you want.
So February 2nd, I received an email requesting, we have in the OPP, a representative within the government buildings in Toronto, and they're a liaison between government and the OPP. And I received an email from that unit saying that Solicitor General wanted a number of OPP members who have been in Ottawa since the beginning of the event. So I asked my team to create a chart which indicated the numbers from the beginning of the event until the 2nd of February. And I described what that chart looked like yesterday. It included numbers of logistical people, EOC numbers, frontline members, public order unit members. And I emailed that to my chief superintendent. And since we're a paramilitary organization, we follow the chain of command. And then I assume from that point on, those numbers that I obtained were moved up to higher levels.
And the minister, on that basis, issued a statement to the public and in the House, in the legislature, correct?
I became aware of that later. I wasn't aware of
Yes.
it at the time.
And it was erroneous.
I can't say that.
Well, there weren't 1,500 OPP officers here, were there?
In a day, Chief Soley, in his concerns to me that when we had our meeting, was he felt that that media release indicated there was 1,500 OPP officers in his streets, in his town that day.
Yes. And that impacted, now know this, it impacted what the RCMP considered the Ottawa Police Service needed. It impacted the way the public in Ottawa thought that the OPS was handling the matter. It impacted the council and all of the other things, didn't it?
As I stated to Chief Soley, I presented the daily numbers with a roll-up of the total numbers. How those numbers were used or controlled after that was beyond my control.
Yes. And what steps did you take to tell the Solicitor General that the information upon which she was relying had been misunderstood, misinterpreted? Any steps?
It was not within my purview to reach out to the Solicitor General.
Did you tell your commanding officer
I did not.
that had happened?
No, I did not. That
Thank
meeting
you.
was the first time.
Two quick things. The bridge. Have you seen Chief Slowly's news conference of February the 4th that you told the commission about yesterday?
I only saw the live portion when I was sitting in the command post, and I saw him and Deputy Bell doing the news conference.
So you're relying on your memory from February 4th?
Yes, I recall hearing that and then reacting immediately because I connected with the deputy immediately.
Well, I don't have the time to play it for you, but he never said that he was going to close bridges. What he said in his news conference was that consideration was being given to that and that bridges or access would be closed if needed or as needed. Didn't say he was closing bridges, did he?
That's what I heard. And so that would naturally precipitate a call to confirm what I heard. Maybe I misheard. That's why I needed to reach out to Deputy Bell to say, did I hear this correctly?
And
I need to understand.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. And you were told by Deputy Bell that you had misheard it, that there were no bridges being
It's like a
closed.
fist fight between all the police agencies.
My concern was more about the off-ramps. The bridges were within the city of Ottawa, so I wasn't concerned about the bridges. My main concern was about what I heard about off-ramps.
Same thing though. Deputy Bell
It's not the
said,
same thing for me as far as my concern and my operations, because my operations didn't concern bridges.
he gave you the same answer. You have misunderstood it. No one's closing a bridge. No one's closing an off-ramp. Relax.
I heard it very clearly that there was a plan to close off-ramps, and that's what precipitated my call to Deputy Bell.
Quick thing about the PLT. This PLT team, unfortunately, never had any success in negotiating the departure of convoy participants or protesters, correct?
I would disagree with that. I felt that at the end, much of their work allowed some of the convoy protesters to leave voluntarily.
So prior to the, I should have been clearer, thank you. Prior to the public order operation going into effect to clear these streets, PLT had not succeeded in negotiating an end to this protest, had they?
Well, certainly, the protest was still ongoing when public order had to do what they did.
Yes, and so the Coventry Road issue, what PLT had negotiated, am I correct, was that protesters could take their fuel from Coventry Road and place it in a different depot.
I wasn't aware of the particulars of that because PLT didn't report to me. What I was engaged in was solely on the deconfliction end of it to say that this happened, this miscommunication happened within the Ottawa Police Service, and could you help us?
As my friend Mr. Van Nieuwenhuis asked, the fuel in Coventry Road, whether it's in Coventry Road or it's somewhere else, was a significant public safety risk, correct?
Yes.
And if PLT negotiated that they're going to move the fuel from Coventry Road to a different depot, you could appreciate why Ottawa Police Service would be very concerned. Correct?
I can't speak to what the idea was or what the plan was because
Got it. So you would not, you're not telling the commissioner that you're second guessing the operational decision to seize fuel if that was a public safety risk, correct?
Correct, because our teams were intended to integrate and they didn't report to
Understood.
me.
Thank you. And then Windsor. The information that was available to OPP was not sufficient to allow it to avoid the blockade at Windsor.
I was not involved in any of the Windsor. I would not have any information on
Understood.
Windsor or our plans in Windsor.
And resources have to be allocated among the OPP detachments across the province so that when we saw the note from your colleague in Windsor about whether Windsor was a priority over Ottawa, that's a decision that has to be made at the level of the OPP resource allocation, correct?
Right. In a province the size of Ontario, there's various priorities that have to be decided on how we staff them.
And as to the Emergencies Act, the OPP PLT notes to protesters included and relied upon terms under the Emergencies Act, right?
I believe that's what we saw, yes.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to call on the City of Ottawa.
Good morning, Superintendent. My name's Ann Tardif. I represent the City of Ottawa.
Good morning.
So I'd like to take you first to your notes. I know you have them in front of you, and I'll give you the date, but I'm going to give the number so that everyone else can follow along.
Certainly.
It's OPP 50774. And I'm going to go to the date at February 3rd, Superintendent.
Yes.
And it's page 19 of that document, Madam Clerk. Do you see the date there at the top of the page?
Yes, 3rd of February. Yes.
Correct. And I'd like to go to the before last entry on that page, Madam Clerk. So just scrolling down a little bit. Perfect. So do you see the entry there, Superintendent? I think it's 1752. It could be 1952. I'm not sure the time matters, but do you see that entry?
I do.
Okay. And it says Superintendent Alakas, FSB, and that note. And it's actually the last sentence, I suppose it is, of that entry that I want to draw your attention to. It says no real plan for them and no meaningful dialogue with truckers occurring. So first, is this something that you're reporting to Superintendent Alakas, or is he reporting it to you?
And I'll correct you quickly. My grade 4 teacher would still not be happy with me. My penmanship is not the best. This is no real plan forthcoming.
Forthcoming. Okay. It's the second part that I want to talk about, the no meaningful dialogue with truckers occurring. Do you see that?
Yes, that's coming from Superintendent Alakas.
Okay. And this is with respect to the Ottawa situation. So by February 3rd, we don't have any meaningful dialogue with truckers occurring. And you described the events of February 6th yesterday and again this morning, correct?
Yes.
PLT went into Coventry to negotiate the removal of gasoline.
Yes, that's fine.
And
Yes.
Superintendent Patterson used the opportunity to seize the fuel and charge some of the protesters, is that correct? And PLT felt they had lost all the goodwill they were able to reach with some of the convoy organizers.
That's what was communicated to me. Yes.
And were you aware that 2 days later on February 8th, Ottawa Police asked the city Ottawa manager to meet with protesters?
I was not aware of that.
And we've heard that police felt they didn't have anything to lose by facilitating a meeting, and it would be a win to gain trust with truckers. They could use it as a bargaining chip to move trucks. Were you aware of that at the time?
I was not aware of that. No.
We've heard as well that the city negotiated an agreement to remove trucks from the residential neighborhoods. Were you aware of that at the time?
Not at the time. I can indicate that I received messaging from our PLT members to indicate that they were frustrated by the involvement of municipal leaders and how it was impacting their work, but I was not aware of the exact times.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm getting at, Superintendent, because that's reflected in your witness summary, which has been filed in evidence. And so at the time that you received those concerns from your PLT officers, I take it you were not aware that the city had spoken with protesters at the request of police.
Right, outside of what may have been reported in public media, I wasn't aware.
Okay. And you were not aware that a senior OPS officer had been at the table to negotiate the logistics of how and where the trucks would
No,
go.
I would not have been aware of that.
And just given in your
reference
already,
in your witness summary, you indicate that your PLT officers
were frustrated because they were hearing from protesters that they had met with the mayor and that they wanted to
and that they wanted to
continue to meet with the mayor.
continue to meet
That's
with
what
the
you
mayor.
were
That's what you were hearing on the 15th of February.
And the evidence this
And
commission
the evidence this
has
commission
heard
has
is that
heard
the
is that the
protesters,
protesters,
in fact,
in fact, never met with Mayor Watson. I take it you're aware of that now.
Now I'm aware.
I want to switch
I want to
tracks
switch
a little bit.
tracks a little bit
And talk about
Superintendent Early's
Now,
notes.
she,
Now,
and it's Dana, I'm assuming
Dana
it's
Early
Dana
is
Early
a
is a
she.
she.
Is that fair?
Just want to check.
Just
Thank
want
you.
to check.
And
Thank
so,
you. And so,
Superintendent Early was in Windsor
during the Ambassador Bridge blockade.
She was essentially performing my role, but
Fair enough. And
Fair
so I take it
And
that
so I take it that if you did have a conversation with her, it's going to be about resources. I mean, that's really the only reason for you to be superintendent during the events.
I can't find my fucking interview with Tom on YouTube.
Now, when you were asked yesterday, initially, you did not believe that you had spoken to Superintendent Early at that time. You recall saying that?
yeah, I didn't have that conversation.
Fair enough. And to be fair to you, you see that there's no mention of it in your notes except for the words Dana Early slash on February 10th, correct? And you were then taken to Superintendent Early's notes of that call. And I will ask that they be screened. It is OPP 404543. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And can we go to page 15? Okay. So this, just to be fair to the witness, the date's not perfect. You see the top there, 10th of February, 2022. Can you see that, Superintendent? Okay. So just before we get into this, you described at some length in your testimony a meeting that occurred with the planning team and with the leadership of OPS headquarters on Elgin Street. I believe that was on February 9th. Is that correct? Okay. Pardon me?
I believe it started at 10.
Okay, we've got the same meeting. That's the day before February 10th, obviously. Okay. So you explained during that meeting, I don't know if I did explain it in some details in your witness summary, which has now been filed. But at some point, as I understand it, Superintendent PRC tells them she's slowly to pump the brakes on the enforcement plan. Is that fair? And he says that he thinks he can get 400 POU officers to Ottawa in
Says Tom,
a week's
or just please wait while your video finishes processing.
When Tetro was saying that.
Pardon me.
not to fill loops.
Can you go to my,
The statement is
the
what
statement
as
is,
you
go to
put it,
YouTube on
as
your phone,
made by
like
your
my
own
YouTube, and see if you.
And is Staff Tartan
And is
Tetra
Staff Tartan
also with
Tetra
your
also
CRP?
with your
He is, and
CRP?
he
He
has a public order component in it as well.
Perfect. So we've got an
Perfect. So we've got
RPMP
an
officer
RPMP
advising that
officer
they think
advising that
they
they
can
think they
get
can get
400
400
POU
POU
officers
officers
in
in
about a
Ottawa
week's
in
time,
about a
right?
week's time,
correct.
right?
So
That's
if we're at
So
February
if we're
9th, that
February
means they
9th,
think they
that
can
means
get
they
their
think they can
400
get their
POU
400
officers
POU
in
officers
Ottawa
in
on or
Ottawa
about
on
February
or about
16th.
February
Fair?
16th. Fair?
Okay.
Okay.
And I think we've heard at
And I
length
think we
that
heard at length
a
that
number greater
a
than
number
that was
greater than that was
actually
actually
needed
needed
in
in
order
order
to
to
bring
bring
the
the
convoy
convoy
to
to
an
an
end,
end.
Certainly,
Right?
I believe,
Certainly, I believe,
Staff Sergeant Tetro
Staff
believes
Sergeant
that as
Tetra
well. He
believes
just
that as well. He
indicated,
just indicated.
let's start there.
Let's
and we'll
start
work with
there,
our
then we'll
public
work
order
with our
partners
public
across the
order
country
partners across the
to
country.
try to gather.
To try to
Fair enough. So the 400 was a
The
start.
400 was a start. Now,
If we can scroll
if
down
we
to
can scroll down to
1021,
1021,
that's the first
that's
indication
the
of
first
the call. Do you
indication
see
of the
that
call. Do you see
call?
that call?
I can't know. I can't
I
tell if
can't
that's
know. I
to or
can't tell
from.
if
It
that's
looks
to or
like
from. It
not
looks
much
like from. Not much
turns
turns
on it.
not much
Craig
turns on
Abrams.
it. Craig
To
Abrams.
confirm
To
resources, and
confirm
that's
resources, and
consistent with
that's
what you've told
consistent
us.
with
Any
what you've
call
told us.
with
Any call with
Superintendent Early really would
Superintendent
have been
Early
to
really
focus
would
on
have been to focus
resources,
on
right?
resources,
Yes.
right?
And
Yes.
then Ottawa has
And
been
then
sending
Ottawa has been
resource
sending
sheets.
resource sheets.
Is that sheets?
Is that
Sheets,
sheets?
To
Sheets.
EOC.
To
That's the
EOC,
Emergency
that's the
Operations
Emergency
Center, the
Operations Center of
OPP.
the OPP.
And based in Aurelia.
The
We
base
use
in
that term
we
a lot.
use that
So
term a
every
lot.
region
So
has
every
an
region has
emergency
an
operations
emergency
center. So in
operations
this
center.
case,
So in this case,
she's
she's talking about
Aurelia because
Aurelia because
we were both using
we were both
Aurelia to
using
help
Aurelia
facilitate
to help
logistics,
facilitate
to
logistics,
obtain
to
resources
obtain
for both
resources
our
for both
operations.
our operations.
That's right. So you've gotten
That's right.
exactly
So
where
you've
I
gotten
wanted to
exactly
get
where
at.
I wanted to
This
get. This is the same place that you both are writing to get
right?
resources, right?
Okay. And then
And then
1023.
1023.
Actually, before I get here,
I think I heard you say that you believe
Superintendent
that
Early had a
Superintendent Early had a
scribe. Is
scribe.
that right?
Is that right?
Yes,
Yes,
I thought, I would
yes,
assume
I
she
thought- I
did.
would assume she did.
Okay, and so you believe
Okay,
that
so
these are
you
notes
believe that
taken
these are
by
notes
her
taken
scribe.
by her scribe.
And that I have
And
no
that I have no
confirmation of that.
confirmation
Okay.
of that.
Assuming
Okay.
it was,
It was, but it could be
Okay.
mistaken.
That's
So
fine.
at 1023,
So 1023 advised Abrams Windsor is priority according to
Do you see
deputy.
that?
Do you see that?
And the next line
And the
refers
next
to a
line
gentleman
refers to a
named
gentleman
Harkins.
named
Is that
Harkins. Is that
Harkins? Is that
Harkins?
Deputy
Is that
Commissioner
Deputy
Harkins?
Commissioner Harkins?
Yes.
And
Yes.
he's in
And
charge of the
he's
Field
in charge of
Services
the
Bureau.
Field
Do I have
Services
that
Bureau.
right?
Do I have that
So he's
right?
deputy in charge of
She's
field
deputy in charge of
operations.
field
Field
operations.
operations.
Field
Okay.
operations.
And so as I'm
so
reading
as I'm reading
this,
as
the Deputy
the
Harkins
Deputy Harkins
advised
Windsor
that Windsor is priority. Is that the way to read
Is that the way to read this?
That's what
That's what that says.
That's what that says.
And Harkins,
And Deputy Harkins told
me, being
me,
Superintendent
Superintendent
Early, to go
Early,
through
to
the
go through
EOC,
the
and you advised
EOC,
that
and
that's
you
what was
advised that that's
happening
what
at
was
that time,
happening at
right?
that time, right?
So you're both going
So
to
you're
the
both
same
going to the
emergency
same
operations
emergency
center
operations center to request resources for your operations.
We'll have much
We'll
better
have much better idea of numbers this afternoon after meeting with
POU
POU commanders.
And then at
And then at
1024,
10:24,
sorry, 1026.
sorry, 10:26, jumping over the 10:24, you can see it there, Superintendent.
Abrams will
Abrams will call
call
EOC to confirm
process.
staffing process.
You are
You are
priority.
priority.
We will
We
take
will take
leftovers.
leftovers.
Do you accept that
Do
you
you
made that
accept that you
statement,
made that
Superintendent
statement,
Abrams? Either that or
Superintendent
something.
Either
to
that or
effect.
something.
Alright, I'm gonna do.
No, I don't.
No, I
remember
don't
that statement.
You don't recall.
You don't recall.
I love you.
recall
Bye.
any discussion that Windsor was the priority for resources to be obtained out of the EOC at that time.
No, I don't recall, because on that day, literally that day, the 10th, I spoke with the chief party, and we made resource requests, and an extra 120 officers were coming to Ottawa by the Monday. So that's why I'm confused by the talk about resource allocations, because I asked, and we required another 120, and it was approved, and it just obviously to get people across the province into Ottawa, it's going to take us a couple of days. We plan to have an extra 120 officers in Ottawa by that Monday.
And at
And
1026
at
again, that is
10:26 again, that is the second
1026.
10:26.
Abram advised
Abram
Windsor
advised
will need to
Windsor
tell
will
you
need to
what
tell
you
you what you
So
need.
we've got
So
three
we've got
statements
three statements
between 1021 and
1026,
1026, suggesting that you were
suggesting
made
that you were
advised here
made
that Windsor was
advised
the
here that Windsor
priority,
was the
but you deny
priority,
that.
but you deny that.
I was never told
I was
that.
never told
So I'm
that.
not denying
So
that
I'm not
statement
denying that
was
statement
made, but
was made,
when
when
we had discussions,
we had discussions, she told me that the
told
deputy
her that Windsor
told
was a
her that
priority.
Windsor was a priority.
So I'm saying,
So
okay,
I'm saying, okay,
you're telling me that
you're
the
telling me that
deputy
the deputy told you
Windsor
Windsor
was
was
a
a
priority,
priority, then okay.
But that information,
That
from what I'm
information,
seeing,
from what I'm seeing is
The deputy, Harkins, I'm assuming, was telling her. I didn't tell her.
So we may just be lost
So we may just be lost
in language and semantics. When I said
semantics. When I said you were never told,
I
I was meaning to say by Superintendent Early. Do you accept that you were told by Superintendent Early?
Pardon me, that her understanding was that Windsor was the priority. I'm not asking you what you
I'm
were
not
told
asking
by
you what you were told by
I
Deputy
accept based on
Harkins.
the notes. I don't have any.
That's fine, but you
That's
accept it
fine,
based
but
on
you
the
accept
notes.
it based on the
Thank you. If we
notes.
could keep
Thank you. If we
scrolling
could
down.
keep scrolling down.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm looking at
So
the
I'm looking at
second
the second
1028 note.
1028 note.
And you were taken
and
to
you were
this in
taken to this in fairness
to you,
to
Superintendent,
you,
yesterday.
Superintendent,
Do you
yesterday.
see Ottawa
Do you
is
see
just
Ottawa is
trucks
just
on side
trucks
streets?
on
You see
side
that note
streets? You
there?
see that note
Yes.
there?
And
And
I think you said yesterday
I
that
think
you
said
also
yesterday
did
that you
not
also
have an
did not have an independent recollection of this call,
I
correct?
really don't.
I really
trying,
don't. I've been
but,
trying,
so many
but,
calls
so
over
many
so
calls
many
over
weeks.
so many
I can't
weeks.
say that I
I
recall
can't say
this
that I recall
one
this
specifically.
specifically.
But you
But
explained
you
what you may
explained
have
what you
meant
may have
yesterday.
meant
You said
yesterday.
that it was
You said that it
easy
was
to drive
easy to
around
drive around
if you were south
if
of
you were south of
Wellington,
Wellington,
i.e.
i.e.
outside of the red zone.
The
I
red
think you
zone.
said south
I think you
of
said
the
south of
401.
For 17.
For 17.
Oh, pardon me. Did
Oh,
you say
pardon me.
south of the
Did you say south of
417?
the
My
417? My apologies.
No,
No, that's fine. I had south of the
south of the
south of the
417.
417.
Yes, it would have.
Yes, it would have-
Based on what I'm reading
based on
and
what I'm reading
trying to
and
recall,
trying to recall,
I would have had general
we would have had
conversations
general
about what she was
conversations about
dealing
what
with,
she was dealing
and
with,
what I was dealing
and
with,
what I was
and what it
dealing
looked
with,
like
what it looked like
in her area and what it
in
looked
her
like in my
area,
area, and we
my
would
area,
have
and we would
had
have
conversations about the impacts to the
the
city of
impacts to
Windsor
the city of Windsor
overall because of the
overall because
location
of the location
of
of
Ambassador Bridge and those types
Ambassador
of
Bridge.
things. I believe that's the
I believe that's
context
the
of
context
where
of
this comes from.
where this
So
comes from.
if I understand
So
it
if I
correctly,
understand
it
it
was
correctly,
that
it was that if you were outside of the sort of impacted downtown
you could
core,
drive
you
around
could
the
drive
city. You
around
could
the
navigate
city.
the
You could
city outside
navigate
the
the city
downtown
outside
core
the
that was
downtown
blocked.
core
Is
that
that
was
fair?
blocked.
That
Is
was
that
your
fair? That was your
That was
personal
personal
experience.
experience
personal
and the
experience
times I had
and the times
to be
I
able
had
to do that
to be able
drive.
to do that
I'm sure
drive.
there were
I'm
days,
sure there were days
traffic
due to
backups
traffic
that there was
backups that there
difficulty in
was
some areas
difficulty
of
in
the
some
city.
areas of the
I'm
city.
just
I'm
stating
just
in general
stating in
terms
general
my
terms
own
from my own
experience. I
experience.
didn't see a
I
massive
didn't see a
impact
massive
outside of that
impact
core
outside of
area,
that core area,
traffic-wise.
traffic-wise.
Okay. And you were aware,
And
I
you
take
were
it at
aware,
the
I take
time,
it at the
that
time,
some of the
that
bridges
some of the bridges
between Gatineau and Ottawa
were
were closed or
were
subject to lane
closed or subject to lane
reductions.
reductions.
Lane reductions for
Lane
sure.
reductions for sure.
Full closures.
Full closures.
I believe they were
I
kind of
believe they were
rotating
kind of
depending
rotating
on
depending on
days.
days,
Because I recall, there was impacts with nursing staff that were trying to get from Gatineau to the hospitals in Ottawa. So there had to be some give and take to open up some lanes so people could get to work.
So we had health
So we had health
professionals having difficulty
accessing their place to work,
That's what I
correct?
recall.
That's what I
And you recall also,
And you
I take
recall
it,
also,
that
I
we
take
had
it, that we had
patients having difficulty accessing their
appointments.
Were you aware of that?
I only recall that some leaders of the hospitals that indicated that their staff weren't able to get to work on time, which had obviously operational impacts for their agencies. And there was a request, not controlled by the OPP, but a request whoever was responsible on either side to make some accommodations for that.
And those side
And those
streets,
side
the
streets,
trucks
that
were parked on and
the
off.
trucks
As you say,
were
they weren't parked on the bridge or on the 417, they were
parked
parked
on
on
the
side
side
streets.
streets.
Those side
Those
streets
side
were
streets
in
were
residential
in
neighborhoods.
residential neighborhoods.
There may have been
There
apartment
may have
buildings
been
on them,
apartment
but
buildings on them. As
when you say residential,
when you say residential,
I'm
I
picturing
think
suburban.
suburban.
But there may be urban apartments that were on those sites, certainly.
Yep. And so the cars were parked at the apartment and condo buildings.
I'm sure they were, yes.
They were idling and honking.
There was lots of honking, yes.
And we've heard complaints of resident harassment in these neighborhoods as well. You heard, I take it, Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson saying that they received complaints about that.
And I heard it personally myself in my own visits to store owners that told me directly.
And I appreciate you weren't in Windsor, but my understanding is that there were roughly about 100 trucks involved in the Windsor blockade. Is that accurate?
I can comment, I wasn't involved and I don't recall.
You're well over your time, so you're going to have to wrap up.
Well over your
Can you
time
just
is all
confirm
right.
that the I mean, I don't think it's contentious, but that the blockade in Windsor was significantly smaller than in Ottawa in terms of number of trucks?
It was smaller in number of trucks, certainly, yes.
And I just want to confirm, last point, Commissioner, under the not affecting livelihoods, I won't go into details. You've explained yesterday that you were aware that businesses were affected in Ottawa, and I thank you for that. But I think I heard you say in response to my friend's questions earlier this morning that you and Superintendent Early may have discussed, in fact, the economic impact of the Windsor blockade, in particular with respect to international trade. Is that fair?
I think we talked about what her blockade was doing in relation to mine, similar to, really in my experience to the rail blockades in Tyndega and the economic impacts rail blockade has. It was very similar in circumstance,
More significant than in Ottawa.
economically.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Superintendent. Thank you, Commissioner, for your indulgence.
Okay, next is the Ottawa Coalition.
Good morning, Superintendent Abrams. Thank you so much for coming to Ottawa and answering these questions for all of us here. My name is Paul Champ. I'm legal counsel for the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses from downtown.
Tax the rich.
And I just have some questions for you. Superintendent Abrams, were you aware, did you know about how many residents roughly lived in the red zone in downtown Ottawa?
Not aware at all, no.
So if I said 15,000 approximately, would that
That would be the first time I heard that number, but based on the time I've spent downtown and the number of buildings I've seen, it certainly seems like an accurate number.
And so when you were making decisions or being involved in the operations, the police operations in Ottawa, you were aware, we're talking about thousands of people who are being impacted by these convoy protests in downtown Ottawa.
Certainly, and when it came to that, I mean, how many people were required or the impact, I had to rely on my partners at the Ottawa Police Service to indicate to me what was happening down there, what impacts were happening, and what they needed to address those impacts.
And you were aware there were a large number of businesses in downtown Ottawa that were shut down completely, correct?
Sure, I saw them myself personally, as I said, in my own visits to business owners, and saw many businesses were closed.
And obviously, not only those business owners experiencing those losses, there would have been countless workers who were out of jobs during that period of time as well. You would have known that.
Certainly, I live an hour from the city. I have family and friends who were directly impacted and talked about having to relocate because of the honking, because of the noise. So yes, I was aware.
Right. And on with respect to the conditions on the streets, you're aware of obviously the large number of semi-trucks, in some cases right outside of people's doors, honking and so forth. But we also had other conditions downtown, like the large stacks of wood, the large number of propane tanks often together, the jerry cans of diesel fuel, the open fires at almost every other intersection, the fireworks that were going on at night. You were aware of all those conditions, correct?
Yes.
And we heard evidence last week, Superintendent Abrams, about residents being fearful that their building perhaps could catch on fire. There could be an explosion from the dangerous propane and so forth that's around. You agree that that was a reasonable fear?
Certainly, I believe there was an actual arson type incident, not linked to the convoy, I guess specifically, but we saw that it clearly could be something that could happen. So yeah, it was a valid concern of the residents for sure.
And it was your view that the police, well, it was the case, was it not, Superintendent Abrams, that the police were unable to effectively control or prevent these inflammatory and explosive materials from being regularly transported on a daily basis to the downtown core, correct?
It certainly was a challenge to prevent the flow of gasoline.
Well, it wasn't a challenge. It couldn't be done. They couldn't do it. Maybe it could have been done, but they weren't stopping it, correct?
I know my officers made attempts at times, but at times they get swarmed by other members, so they'd have to pull back. So there was attempts made at certain times to do so, but it was a difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying that they couldn't do it. Like effectively, they couldn't do it given the numbers that were on the ground of police at the time, correct?
It was difficult.
Well, it wasn't possible.
I wouldn't say it was impossible. Our members tried, and I believe some gas was seized. I can't be for certain about my membership because I told my members, because my members were normally in two-person units, so it was highly dangerous to their safety to try to get involved with multiple people carrying jerry cans when there's just two of them. So from an OPP perspective, I can say that, yeah, we did not engage in trying to interdict gasoline simply because we were outnumbered with our numbers as they were.
And yeah, and that's a very good point that you just made there, Superintendent Abrams. It wasn't simply downtown residents and business at risk. It was, there was dangers to your officers downtown because of the circumstances or conditions, correct?
Well, certainly my officers were subjected not only to threats of physical assault, but yelling. I had to get my public order unit teams hearing protection because it was starting to damage their hearing because they spent so much time downtown.
Yeah, the horns and the diesel fumes, no doubt you were hearing complaints about that from your officers.
Horns, yes. Diesel fumes, I can't say that I heard.
And now we've heard you say, Superintendent Abrams, that on January 29th, it was your view and the view of the OPP that the Auto Police Service did not have the capability to bring an end to this, this incident or this event. Is that fair to say?
I have to look at my notes, and that would have been the day that I had the conversation with Inspector Ferguson.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, it was clear that they were, that particular day, were dysfunctional and unable to make a plan. I don't believe I would make an opinion that just because of what she was experiencing or seeing that day meant that there was no way the Ottawa Police Service could resolve this event eventually. It was just an observation that day that there was no plan and they were dysfunctional that day.
But to be clear, Superintendent Abrams, even if the Auto Police had a great plan, and we've heard all the evidence about the struggles of coming up with a plan that was acceptable to the OPP, but even if they had a plan, it was very clear to you the Ottawa Police Services simply did not have the resources on the ground to bring that incident to an end, correct?
As of, on January 29th, that would be an accurate statement.
Right. And that remained your view throughout, and in fact was the reality. It wasn't until significant numbers came that they were able to bring it to an end, correct?
Yes.
And it's my understanding, Superintendent Abrams, that you had a conversation on January 31st with Deputy Chief Bell, where he indicated to you the Auto Police Service at that time was looking at a 4-week sustainability plan. Do you recall that?
Do you recall that?
And you were quite surprised, is my understanding about that?
I was.
You were concerned the Ottawa Police were looking at already that this could be a prolonged event and they were just going to try to manage it for 4 weeks. That was your understanding at the time?
Correct, because I just, from my experience, we normally plan kind of in 24-hour cycles, 48-hour cycles. To hear that there was a plan that didn't look like it would have a resolution until at least 4 weeks was surprising to me. Yes, to hear that length of time that they were planning, and I believe that was the conversation where he basically stated, we don't know how to resolve this.
And I presume, Superintendent, that it was a concern to you because you could observe yourself about the significant impact on the residents in downtown Ottawa. Is that fair?
Yes, and I believe in my other events, I said, as in my experience, as more time goes by in these events, it only adds more participants, which makes the job of policing more difficult. Right. As each day and week passes, it makes the job even more difficult. So, excuse me, that's why there's a desire to try to end this type of event as soon as you can.
Actually has a little makeup kit for this.
And that leads to another point, Superintendent.
Yeah, I guess when you're used to doing it all right. Okay, I'm just going to wait a second here for a few
closing
people to
the
jump
off
on.
To the 417, and the OPP did not prefer that option, correct? You wanted you were content with the trucks to continue to come downtown Ottawa on the weekends that followed.
I guess on that note,
no, we were happy in the weeks that followed after the main arrival. We were happy to work with our partners, and most of it was our own partners within the province of Ontario saying there's X number of trucks coming to Ottawa. We were happy to try to work out and communicate with them first, hopefully, to say, look, there's no more room downtown. You can't try to get downtown, go to Castleman or go to these other areas. We would try to do those communications with those operators first.
So the PLTs.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we weren't successful, yes, Ottawa Police would say, OPP, can you close this ramp or this ramp, because there's just no capability to accept those vehicles. It's going to cause traffic chaos. So can we try to get them to go to this ramp? So the only way to get them to that ramp would be to close other ones. So we would do that, off and on but we certainly weren't supportive of just a total block 24/7 of off-ramps or on-ramps.
Well, if I understand what you're telling us, Superintendent Abrams, is that the OPP worked with the Ottawa Police to try to identify the best routes for the trucks to get downtown if they were going to indeed come downtown. Is that right? That would minimize the traffic impacts on the rest of the city.
Certainly, once the protest was underway and we're into the second and third week, our plan was if with a truck was to try to get downtown, we would interdict it, stop it, and make arrests under the mischief authorities because it was clear their intent was to participate in what was going on downtown. That's why they were going there. So the idea and the plan was probably in the second or third week is that if we saw a convoy coming across in the middle of the night and their intent was to come to Ottawa, we were going to monitor that convoy, try to communicate with them to say, don't go downtown. This is a risk you take. If you go downtown, you're clearly wishing to participate in what is an illegal event. And if you get off at an off-ramp and intend to head downtown, we will stop you.
But that was just the last 4 or 5 days when the operation was being rolled out to bring the event to an end, correct?
Just prior to, that's correct.
Yeah. So
I just didn't want to make a blanket statement that we were going to facilitate the arrival of trucks through this whole event. No, at some point, we were not going to facilitate trucks heading into the downtown core.
Yeah, but that was around February 16th or 17th you stopped doing that. On the weekends of 5th and 6th and the 12th, there were big signs on the Highway 417 saying, convoy truckers this way, correct?
That's correct. I just wanted to make sure your initial statement was, it kind of made it seem that we were going to allow trucks downtown through the whole event.
And Superintendent Abrams, I'm not sure if you appreciate how the affected residents of downtown Ottawa felt when they saw the Ontario Provincial Police putting up big signs saying convoy truckers this way, apparently rolling out a welcome mat to them downtown. Did you appreciate how the people in downtown Ottawa would have felt at that time?
I certainly can appreciate that. And our perspective is we had to rely on Ottawa Police to say, this is where we need those trucks to go. This is where we think we can house them. So we were only doing what Ottawa Police were requesting of us to facilitate the movement of trucks. I appreciate and understand the impact.
You're out of time.
I thought I got 15.
No, you, according to my notes, you had 10.
I believe my notes had 15. Can I ask one more question there, Commissioner?
Yes, go ahead.
Superintendent Abrams, you've told us that you reported up to Commissioner Creek and Deputy Commissioner Harkins about your observations of your concerns with downtown Ottawa, with the Ottawa Police and how they were effectively doing that. You would have assumed that they would have reported that up to the Solicitor General?
No, because I'm not familiar with what type of communication the commissioner has with Solicitor General, whether he reports those things to them or not. I'm not aware of that.
Okay, but given your observations of the challenges, the significant challenge the Ottawa Police Service were having to respond to this event, both based on the problems you were seeing at senior command, as well as just the bare resources, did you consider, or do you know of anyone in the OPP ever considered reporting this either to the Ontario Civilian Police Commission or perhaps to the Ottawa Police Services Board, so some type of effective action perhaps could have been taken by others to direct or guide the Ottawa Police Service towards a more effective response?
I was never involved in any conversations like you would suggest.
Was that ever considered? Or were you aware of that if that was ever considered?
I wasn't aware if that was ever considered, no.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, call on the province of Saskatchewan.
Good morning. Can I be heard in Ottawa?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Mike Morris, and I'm counsel for the Government of Saskatchewan. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
We have about 5 minutes, give or take, today, so it won't be too long. I have some fairly straightforward questions for you, I think. Sir, will you agree with me that OPP officers have authority to enforce the criminal code and provincial offenses, including under the Highway Traffic Act?
They do have that authority, yes.
And am I correct that OPP officers have always had this authority, including in the city of Ottawa?
Yes, they're sworn in as officers in the province of Ontario.
So it follows that OPP officers have not required the provincial or federal emergency act to be invoked to have those powers then, is that correct?
Correct. Their powers under the Criminal Code and Highway Traffic Act and other provincial offenses were in authority in any city in the province of Ontario.
And will you agree with me that intentionally blocking a public road with one's vehicle can constitute an offense under the Criminal Code?
There is a block highway offense under the Criminal Code, correct?
And can it also constitute the offense of mischief?
It can as well, yes.
And can it also constitute an offense under the Highway Traffic Act?
Yes. It's a block highway offense.
Now, we've heard some evidence about what's been called the Coventry Road incident, and I understand that occurred on February 6th of 2022, correct?
Seems accurate, yes.
And I understand that the Ottawa Police Service arrested a number of people in relation to fuel that they were stockpiling at the Coventry Road site, correct?
That's what I was advised of that information, yes.
And are you familiar with the offense that these people were alleged to be committing?
I was advised that they were arrested for the offense of mischief.
And would that be aiding and abetting mischief, which was occurring in downtown Ottawa by trucks occupying the core?
That's how I understand it, yes.
Assuming these people were committing an offense, would OPP officers have had the same authority to arrest them as the OPS?
Yeah, the criminal code applies to all law enforcement officers. If an OPP officer chose and felt they had the reasonable grounds under the mischief section to make an arrest for that offense, they would have had the ability to do that if they chose to, yes.
And that's the offense of providing fuel for people participating with their vehicles in the downtown core and blockading roads, correct?
If that particular officer felt that it fit the criminal code and fit as an offense, then he would have the authority to do that.
So at this point, we've heard evidence, quite a bit of evidence about there being a lot of trucks in the Ottawa downtown core. My question is, were there checkpoints for vehicles entering the downtown core before the Federal Emergencies Act was invoked on February 14th?
Checkpoints leading into the downtown core?
Yes, sir.
I can only go by what my officers were asked to do. My officers, OPP officers, were never involved in checkpoints. I can't speak to Ottawa Police or our partners through the MTO. I recall being involved in a teleconference with the MTO where they were considering doing vehicle safety checks within the city of Ottawa, but my members were never involved in any checkpoints.
To your knowledge, were there road closures or traffic diversions before the Federal Emergencies Act was invoked on February 14th? And I'm talking specifically to prevent vehicles from entering the downtown core.
Now, he does say in his Substack that he's going to
I can say there was because on the early days of this event, those were the areas my officers were asked to attend, and when I attended down there to check on them, they were essentially making sure that certain streets were closed in the downtown core. So there was a few barriers that blocked some streets, and some streets were blocked with physical police officers with cruisers blocking streets.
And am I correct then that decision on blocking those streets would have been, the decision of the Ottawa Police Service?
The Ottawa Police Service or the City of Ottawa under their authorities to do that patrol on streets.
And do I understand correct? I believe I heard you say that there were road closures and blocked streets before February 14th when the Federal Emergencies Act came into effect. Is that correct?
There was, yes.
If I can, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a demonstration that occurred in Ottawa in April, known as the Rolling Thunder demonstration. Are you familiar with that one?
You're going to have to do it very quickly. You're already over your time.
Okay, I will be quick, Commissioner. Thank you.
I am aware of it, and I was assigned as a strategic commander for that event as well.
And I understand there was no emergency legislation in place when Rolling Thunder occurred in April, correct?
Correct.
And checkpoints or, I guess, roadblocks or controlled access was used for Rolling Thunder, is that correct?
Correct. My members were used in the same kind of context to do traffic points and to restrict flow of vehicles on certain streets, yes.
And Rolling Thunder was successfully managed and resolved, correct?
I would call it a successful event, yes.
Thank you, sir. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Comparing Rolling Thunder to the convoy is
On the
ridiculous.
JCCF Democracy Fund.
I believe they're attending.
Good morning, Superintendent. I am Alan Honor. I'm a lawyer for the Democracy Fund.
Morning, sir.
Earlier today, Council for Canada asked you about towing guidelines from the OPP Commissioner, and you couldn't comment on those. If you can't comment on this question, it's fine. But are you aware that on February 13th, 2022, before the declaration of the public order emergency, the OPP had confirmed that 7 towing companies were willing to provide services, and a total of 34 heavy-duty trucks were available to the OPP in connection with this protest in Ottawa?
I would not have been aware of that because that was not part of my under my command or part of my mandate.
Thank you. We'll ask that question to another witness later on. Can we pull up OPP.IR.701? This is the OPP institutional report. And can we just go to page 36? Just to put this in context, what we're looking at here is the OPP role in the police response to the Ottawa blockade. And do you see that chart there? Just maybe scroll down a little bit. So we have a chart here. It's called OPP Frontline Officers Provided to Ottawa Police Services.
I see it.
Okay, so do you notice that, well, first of all, let me ask you, these numbers seem accurate to you, that they accurately reflect the frontline officers provided to the OPS on the dates listed?
It does, and I think it's important to clarify when they speak about frontline officers, it is strictly just those officers. These numbers don't include public order unit officers. They don't include intelligence officers. They don't include aviation services. There's many other OPP resources that were used in Ottawa that aren't captured in these numbers, just for clarity.
Yeah, understood. And thank you for clarifying that. What I noticed when I look at this chart is that the frontline officers increased significantly on February the 16th and then again on February the 18th. And obviously you would agree with that. It's in the chart.
Yep.
And now if we could go back just to page 35, and you know, perhaps, Superintendent, I don't need to go back to page 35. Would you agree with me that one of the reasons these officers were able to be deployed to Ottawa at that time was because resources were freed up from Windsor?
I suppose there were more resources from Windsor, but the reason for the increase in the numbers would have been to bolster increased traffic points that needed to be bolstered in that period of time in order to support the public order unit plans. So I can't say that the increase that you see on the chart is directly connected to the successful conclusion of Windsor. It was more related to operational issues and plans here in Ottawa.
Okay, can we just scroll down to where it says February 15th? Pardon me. So it says here, Ottawa Police Services, OPP and RCMP planning sections were physically integrated at the RCMP. And then later on in the next paragraph, following the reopening of the Ambassador Bridge, 400 additional OPP members were rapidly deployed from across the province. So some of those went to Ottawa and some went elsewhere, I suppose.
Yeah, that's correct. And it was in this period of time when we talk about most of those 400 additional officers were frontline officers. And within the OPP, the frontline officer component in Windsor was not as strong. We had a larger public order unit component in Windsor. So the 400 additional OPP members, those were frontline members that came from around the province. And that's why we had to defer block training and cancel discretionary leave to be able to get that number of officers to Ottawa.
And I'm almost out of time here, but would you agree with me that the reason for the redeployment of these frontline officers to Windsor was not related to the Emergencies Act, and that it would have happened anyway?
I'm sorry, I have to repeat your question again.
Yes, absolutely. Would you agree with me that the deployment of these frontline officers to Ottawa and the increase in numbers on the 16th and on the 18th was not directly related to the invocation of the Emergencies Act? It is something that would have happened in any event.
I would agree with that. It was directly related to what we knew now was an operational plan with public order that needed extra support.
And that was the operational plan of February 13th, 2022, correct?
I never saw the plan, so I'm not certain of what the date was, but it was the plan that the integrated planning team came up with.
Was it called the Integrated Mobilization Operational Plan?
I can't be certain of the title of it. I'm sorry.
Okay, but in any event, that plan was in place prior to the invocation of the Emergencies Act.
I know it was being worked on because the integrated planning team came February 9th. They started their work on the 10th and the 11th. The act was in the effect on the 14th. Because I wasn't on that side and I wasn't part of that team, I can't tell you for sure exactly what day that plan was finalized.
That's fine. I suspect we'll hear that from Chief Superintendent Party today. Thank you very much, sir. Those are my questions.
Okay. Any examination by the OPP next? Okay. Any re-examination?
Just one series of questions very briefly. Superintendent Abrams, you gave evidence about that the February 9th meeting, and you were asked in cross-examination about Darwin Tetro and the commitment sought for 400 RCMP officers. You recall that?
I recall, yes.
Can you tell us, was there a similar commitment sought or offered on behalf of the OPP at that meeting?
I don't recall us speaking about public order unit commitments. We already had a large amount of public order sections in the city already. I think it was more, the discussion was more about how we could get extra. Certainly OPP could provide a couple more sections, but in that meeting in Ottawa Police Headquarters, I don't recall us talking about the OPP POU component that may be able to assist. Chief Hardy may have talked about that, but I don't recall that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that completes your examination and cross-examination. Thank you very much for appearing and for your evidence. It's complete. You're now free to leave.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Okay, so we're I think at the time where everybody's entitled to a break. So we will take a break until 5 after 12, and then we'll come back and to go with our next witness, who I understand is Chief Superintendent Party.
The commission is in recess for 15 minutes. La commission levée pour 15 minutes.
that's why he made these faces. That's what I think. That's what I saw right there. Because he is not in the mood. We got the POC. He says, bro, I'm a trucker. My job is sitting for 11 to 13 hours a day. You'll get the hang of it. I don't want to get that.
Right? No, yeah, we can't complain, you know. We can't
Look, I'm a programmer. I sit for hours at a time too. But the thing is, I usually squat. I'm shirtless. I'm wearing my boxers. I jump around. I prance. Okay.
Oh.
And, you know what I mean? I like to code exclusively just wearing boxers. And then my room is always hot because I have so many computers running. So that's my style. So therefore I'm not really right now. I've got to worry about picking my nose, you know what I mean, when you're on camera. So that's like that other dude. What's his name there? He kept biting his nails. Forrest, right? Forrest.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the guy with the hair, the wild hair.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Prancer. No, really, I'm telling you, in the best shape of my life. I was just eating meat for about 5.5 years. I was carnivore. I had diabetic retinopathy in 2009. Lost my vision for 5+ years. Anyways, so then I was on a very strict carnivore diet. Did that for 5.5 years. Only drank liquor and ate meat. Probably the best shape of my life. And I'm telling you, I just get the urge. I have so much energy from being so healthy. And I would just prance all the time. I would just
prance. Oh my God. I mean, just the visual of you, sitting in this room with a stack of like really hot computers, like, giving off heat in your boxer shorts, smoking your pipe, just prancing around, having a cup of coffee.
Oh man, yeah, I got videos. If you want, I can show it to you.
What?
It's on my.
Go to Post OnlyFans to see these videos.
Let me see. Yeah, prance if you got it, says Timbuktu. You got it, man. Let the peasants prance if you can. People were wondering where you get your supplies as well. Flower, you got it, man. Boxers, bare chest, prancers, transfer size equals freedom. That's right, Mike. And then, like so many other people, you feel last couple of years, man. I'm telling you, it's last 2-3 years.
It's been hard to prance.
Hard to prance, man, and I want to get back to prancing, but I'm going to just prance anyway. I'm going back to prancing. I don't care what happens. Yeah, because you can't allow these guys to take that freedom and that fun from your heart, right? To join your step. That's just what it is. You can't allow them to take away any joy that you have, and that's what they want to do. You can see here the government so ineffectual, and also I'm really of two minds with Greg Abrams. I don't believe that he wants to. I think he's trying to toe that line, he's trying to walk that line. He's just walking the line. He's not really toeing the line, just walking the line. He wants to be, I think there's that element where he wants to report the truth, but he'd rather not say that you know what I mean? Where I'm not calling
I think he doesn't want to be disloyal to his department or his dudes, He's trying not to throw his own guys under the bus.
That's right. And then you've got this Paul Chunk coming in every time he comes on screen with his tax the rich sticker on his laptop, trying to gain money. I think this Patterson guy, okay, I got something here. I got a little bit of intel for you. You want some intel? Okay. Yeah, this is some intel, right? This is from the V4F fellows. These guys know their stuff. All right. Now, I'm not saying that this is what it is, but this is something to think about right over here. Look at this over here. So V4F, they put out their daily intelligence summaries called INSUMs, right? At this point, Freedom has a militarily trained, but not militant. The one thing they're militant about is freedom, right? Very peaceful people, extremely peaceful people. Veterans for Freedom, of course, they're the ones behind the great walking Topinator, right? James Top walking across the country. So Tom Quigley puts this out. Is that correct? Yeah, I think it is Tom Quigley. Yep. He puts this out and daily. Okay, so from the 8th of September, if you remember carefully yesterday, remember it was at the end, it was a cross-examination. Let me see if I can dig it up over here. Okay, I'm going to see if I can actually align these two things now. I'm doing this live, so I'm going to be able to find it on time. But give me a second here. I think it's worth looking at. We can do it. Let me see, because because this is going to show you, that's not the right one. This might be it. No, okay. Hold on a second here. Because yesterday, the cross-examination, he's asked a direct question. The lady is asked a direct question. All right. Here it is.
Ferguson.
Ferguson, that's right. Okay, so right here, if we scroll down to it, right towards the end, and here it is. Okay, so they can't rotate the PDF, if you remember carefully.
Yeah, it took 15 minutes break for that.
Right, this is where the plan called Hydra makes its appearance.
Hail Hydra.
Command team meeting. I want to take you to the minutes of that meeting. This is OPS 3014454 at page 124. So we see what the people set my readiness, and we are ready to receive their resources. So down further, she said, enforcement is where we need to show cheap. So, but we would hope this command team, what do you think?
Can you refresh my memory as the member that the meeting after the meeting, to determine what my perception of what was, I was the only one who actually was, everyone else called in.
Okay, I'm just going to jump right to the cross-examination. This is basically for Trish Ferguson. Let's get right to the point because there's this question here that she's asked. All right, so this is all. Okay.
We were discussing Duprat.
Right, exactly. Okay, this is the break. There's a rotation error. Right, we can rotate. Let's keep going. Past this. Okay, past this pirate. Past Paul Chunk.
Paul Chunk.
Right, past this. Here we go. We're getting there. I can feel it getting closer past this beautiful lady. No. Okay, it must be this one who asked it. Is that it? There's a break over here. My mind, I'm telling you, my mind is like a huge. No, okay, so we missed it. It's right over here. Right. I'm getting closer. Here's a question.
Stop.
I'm swearing officers from we heard that some services were released with them. And your information says that many. It says that if it arrived with dump trucks, many protesters would.
Yeah, types of, presumably.
I don't have to look. But she's asked.
And Stefanovic says, bro, it was Brendan Miller.
It was Brendan Miller?
Was it Brendan? I can't remember.
It was Brendan.
Like you said, it's,
yeah.
it's
It was.
an overload.
Yeah. It was a Brendan Miller, but it's with her, right? It's with Brendan Miller. Because that was Rob Cambridge. Okay, there's so much. This is what I do. That's after. Here. Oh, okay, it's right before the pirate. There we go.
In detail and misinformation, media misinformation.
Thank you.
Around it then.
Here we go.
Was to listen to the evidence of the superintendent before testifying today.
This was the time because I was intending prepping for today, so.
This is not war.
All right. Well, I'm not going to ask you about his evidence. Then I'm going to ask you to confirm it if you haven't heard it. But can you agree with me that Superintendent Morris is the most senior intelligence officer within the provincial government in the entire province of Ontario?
I don't actually know that. I believe that, but I don't know that that's.
Wallflower says Ropeck for charge challenge was dismissed. It was not dismissed. It's going to be an appeal. So they agreed. The judge agreed with the Attorney General, but it is one for an appeal. They're going to take it up to Supreme Court.
And you know he works hand in hand with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service.
We discussed some of the testimonies that have taken part thus far at the Public Order Emergency Commission.
Colleague in this regard, for sure.
Yes. Those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Where's the line? You're killing me.
Thomas said you testified.
Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the Communications Security Establishment, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. You're aware of that. And if anyone in the province, within the provincial and even municipal apparatus, knows anything about threats to the security of Canada, it would be him, wouldn't it?
I don't know how to answer that.
Stop!
Thank you for your service. Thank you. I just need to pull one verse. Yes, says Brendan Moorman Council to Freedom Corp, which is a incorporated entity that represents the protesters that were in your city in January and February of 2022. So beginning first with the area that I'm chatting about is the Henley reports. Intelligence. They were the ones that would receive them. Say that it would have been now acting Chief Bell's responsibility to pass those reports on to the office of the chief and chief's level. That's who passed them on. That they had reports from the OPP directly in January of 2022, and Superintendent Morris found that line because the OPP had been providing those reports at OPS since Project Henry started in early 2021. To your knowledge, were the Henry reports not provided by now acting Chief Bell?
Comment on that. My understanding is that Chief was receiving them as part of all chiefs. Sometimes that's how we there's two separate levels. So he might be receiving it in that as general, basically the information is disseminated across the province. But whether Chief Bell was getting them and when he got them.
Chief Bell, right? Chief Bell, it's fair to say then that these Henry reports, they went to someone likely in Chief Bell's unit, but not necessarily Chief Bell.
Yes.
And then that individual who never received them approved, then put together their own product and then provide it to either Chief Bell, and then Chief Bell may or may not provide it to Chief Sloan. Fair? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I just want to get that clarified because it's an important point. I want to talk to you about two of the media reports and some of the misinformation that was spoken about yesterday by Superintendent Morris. The media, through reporting at times and statements of elected officials, reported that the residents of Ottawa were experiencing unprecedented violence. Do you remember reading that?
I don't agree with that.
Do you agree with me that there was not an increase in violent crime or events of violent crime in the city of Ottawa during the
We saw an increase in violent so that the staff counts.
prior to the invocation of the emergencies, only 13 charges made as against the protesters. Do you agree with me on that? Between January?
Charges made and latent in terms of once the information was all gathered and charges were laid after. My understanding is there's some list of charges that were laid in relation to the conflict.
Right, and those charges, I understand, the great majority of them arose after February 14th with respect to the enforcement. It wasn't for things that happened during the time period prior to the invocation. Is that fair?
No, I think they were acts that took place during that time period when the convoy was in town, but that the information was only able to be solidified into saying we were close to the charges.
Right. So would Acting Chief Bell be able to provide a question? Okay, so hopefully he's able to do that. So I think that's an important point. Now, I take it that during the protest, of course, that the Ottawa Police Service, though they weren't at times, the word wasn't put in the code. Saw an individual assaulting another, or that those individuals, after that investigation, those appropriate charges were laid against them.
Yes.
Now, did Chief Sully at any time advise you, May 31st, 2022, to not have the city of Ottawa get an injunction because it's an official movement to another stage, this will involve the whole country, and anything official will spark a national response? Did he tell you about that?
Same with the resources right now to
Right. So I just want to go through again. You mentioned the Emergencies Act order, the Emergency Council that assisted moving protest. All right. So let me turn my to that. How many individuals who bank accounts were frozen, to your knowledge, immediately exited downtown Ottawa? All right. Do you have any information that these individuals who had their bank accounts frozen couldn't leave because they couldn't pay to get out of Ottawa?
And go through the media some of those stories, but I'm not aware of any specifics.
Okay, so with respect to that, can you agree with me that it was only about 58 or 59 individuals who had their bank accounts frozen?
Actually, agrees on those.
And dealing with some of the other enforcement provisions.
No, what it did do was there were some legislative things that it was able to, we were able to get our CMP members here without swearing them all in, which was a bit of an administrative hurdle for us. We were struggling with that throughout the conflict. The emergency that we were just coming in and just do these. So.
And so that is one of the things that's set up. Can you agree with me that if there was an order, once you got resources in place, if there was an injunction in place that had the terms of removal inside it, that these police officers could have done the same thing?
Yes, they could have. That most officers across Canada here.
Right. So I just want to touch on, we've talked a little bit about misinformation. And the evidence from Superintendent Morris yesterday was very interesting. He talked about misinformation in detail, and misinformation in the media was very light. And of course, there's still some misinformation going around. And even we have misinformation, we don't know what's true. It's going to be, but it may or may not be misinformation. Did you tell
Order
any of your friends
allowed.
and colleagues within OPS that at some time prior to you giving testimony here today, you were approached by someone who wanted you to give certain
Here it
evidence?
is, here it is, here it is.
The commission
Sorry
has
about that,
reconvened. The
took a lot of
commission au
time.
plan.
But this is it right here. Okay, listen really carefully. I'm going to reduce the speed.
From your
Good
friends and
afternoon.
colleagues?
Okay, here we go.
We have another witness, counsel.
I don't know
Thank you.
Commissioner,
what the answer to this
it's
is
Frank
going to
Au,
be,
Senior
but
Counsel
it
for the
may or may
Commission.
not be misinformation.
Our next witness is Chief Superintendent
Did you
Party.
tell any of your friends and colleagues within OPS that at some time prior to you giving testimony here today, that you were approached by someone who wanted you to give certain evidence that was not true? Thank you.
Superintendent, will you swear on a religious document or do you
Right
wish to
there.
affirm?
Back it up one more time.
For the record, please state your full name and spell it out.
I don't know what the answer to this is going to be, but it
Do
may
you
or may not
solemnly
be
affirm that the evidence to be?
I think he said he swears.
Did you tell any of your friends
Apologies.
and
Would you like to
colleagues
swear on
within
a religious
OPS
document?
that at some time prior to you
Would you
giving
like to swear on a
testimony
religious
here
document
today,
or affirm?
that you were approached by someone who
On a
wanted you to
religious
give
document?
certain
Sure,
evidence
Bible.
that was not true?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now. Jason, okay, we found it. I'll back it up one more
Do you
time.
swear that the evidence to be given by you to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you tell any of your
Good
friends and
afternoon.
colleagues within OPS
Please have a
that at some time prior to you
Chief
giving
Superintendent
testimony here
Party.
today, that you were approached by someone who wanted you to give certain evidence that was not true?
You remember attending an interview, well, actually 2 interviews with me and my commission colleagues in the summer.
I do, sir.
Right there.
And after the interviews, we provided you with an interview summary.
You did?
May I call up the document number WTS
This is important. man.
6033?
This is how you do it. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm like a.
So Chief Party,
Kind of,
this is
you're a
the
clip
summary that
master. I
we
don't know
sent
what
you
we're
for
doing.
review.
This is what we do.
It was.
Right, you know, you gotta think and move
This is
fast.
the version that you
Mr.
approved.
The
And
biggest
your job is to
I don't know if I said that in
Are there any
Montana.
changes or corrections
I
you'd
had a
like to
good
make?
suggestion.
I
He said,
think, like all documents,
anytime
context
you
is
need a
important.
section
I'm
clip
sure
throw,
we'll come out and do that.
if you put it in the chat,
Okay.
that clip,
Now,
people can see it and
Chief,
clip it there, you can go back and
Superintendent
see it.
Party, I understand that
there.
you
So I thought
recently
that was a good
retired
suggestion.
after serving more than 30 years
Where you spent it
with
before the
the
question was asked. from all
36 and a half years.
What I'll do is I'll put
I
it
started my policing
into
career
from
in
here. and I'll
86.
slow it down. My kid, my
I
13-year-old
left
actually
active duty in July 15th, but I've officially retired now for 3 weeks.
Only 3 weeks.
Only 3 weeks.
Congratulations.
There's no
Now,
lie,
you
but
were a former
Kinda is. That's a lot
critical
better than me.
incident commander.
But
I'm
and
good
you
at
have,
getting it and
throughout your
putting it on
career,
Twitter. This
worked
is a whole
for
different
many
thing.
years
Like
in the
doing it on the
National
fly on
Capital
YouTube.
Region on major
Very
events.
different.
exactly.
Well, I spent
Okay, so
28
there you go.
years
You just
of
seen
my
that.
OPP
Now look
career,
at this. This is
6 of the years were with the RCMP
2022.
in New Brunswick, but my
This is from your
30-year
daily intelligence
OPP career,
summary.
28 of it was
Witness
spent in
tampering
Eastern
and
Ontario
public
in various roles.
Commission panel. Please ask.
The latter part, the last 12 years of my career was as in the senior
Okay, so the
leadership role as
italicized section
superintendent.
there?
No,
I did a lot
the
of
entire
work
thing.
in the
Yeah,
National
I'll
Capital
put this
Region with
down.
major events, presidential
Okay, so
visits,
BFARF was made
leader
aware that
summits,
a potential case of statement
Canada
witness
events, et cetera,
tampering
yes.
may be an upcoming
And
issue
in the
concerning
course
the
of your
Public Order
career,
Emergency Commission.
have you
This commission,
collaborated
often referred to
frequently
as the
with
Public
members
Inquiry
of the
into
Ottawa
the
Police
Emergencies
Service?
Act was due to be in hearing
And
testimony on
what
the
do you know of
19th
their
of September of
reputation in terms
2022.
of
The day has been
managing
delayed
or
for
responding to
approximately 1 month.
large-scale
The
events
objective
like
of this
protests
inquiry is
and
to inquire into the
demonstrations?
circumstances that led to the
First class.
declaration of emergency
Now,
that was in place.
are you aware
on
of
February
any
14th,
changes
20
within the
well,
OPS
February
in recent
14th
years
to the
that might
23rd, excuse
affect
me,
their ability
2022,
to respond
and
to
the
these
measures
kinds of
taken for
events?
dealing with the
Well, certainly
emergency. The
upon my
stated mandate of
arrival
the Public Order
in the
Emergency Commission is
I asked
and assess
going
the
on, what
basis of
happened
the
here?
government's decision
And
to
certainly
declare
the
public order
pandemic
emergency.
has had an
Certain
impact,
circumstances that led to the
retirements, people moved
declaration
on,
and the appropriateness
lack of
and
major
effectiveness
events
of
to
the
keep
measures selected by the
those
government
skills
to deal with the then
when people
existing
move on.
situation.
emergency
Ensured
readiness,
the
emergency
report of the
preparedness
commission
is
should
much like
determine
fire
whether the
prevention. Nobody
government
wants
of
to pay
Canada
for
was
it when nothing's
justified in the
happened.
use of the draconian
And that's
emergencies
across all
act
sectors.
legislation.
But certainly,
So that's the inquiry. Now
there's
we're just
been
going
a
to go
lull,
straight to this.
perhaps since
Okay.
about 2016.
Original source.
With
B2, they got a matrix of
massive,
information,
large-scale
military
events
and,
that since
the
that they've had
CSIS,
in Ottawa.
CSE
So
style
just been
of
considerable
information
passage of time that there
verification.
hasn't
They
been
rate
anything
it
major.
on a matrix. They have a
But
letter
yet
scale and a
Ottawa
number
is
scale,
renowned for
and then they
almost
those put
daily
together
protests of some
allow
sort.
them to rate it.
So I'm going to take you back now to the event
original
back
source.
in
So
January,
source and
February.
true source.
I understand
Pretty good.
that in
Providing
January
information
of this
person
year,
with
you were
significant role in law
the commander of
enforcement
the
to make false
OPP
statements
Northeast
that would give
region, right?
significant
That's correct, sir.
Commission.
And then in early
Secondary
February,
source.
you were asked to lead
Provided information
the
not on a
integrated
witness,
planning group
but rather on
to
unusual
assist
activity.
the Ottawa
So
Police
not
Service.
commission. Now, that's an F6.
So let's
That's
talk
not
about
so
the
obvious.
specific assignment, your lead role with
This is
the
unclassified.
planning group, the integrated
So
planning
this is
group.
it. I mean, you should be checking
When
that
were
before
you
if
asked
haven't
to take
already.
that
Take a
on?
look at the
It was the
agreement.
evening
You
of
got
February
YouTube channel,
7th. I
subscribe to
received
Tom Ronzo,
a
as
telephone
well
call
as,
from my
Deborah
supervisor, who is
There.
Deputy Commissioner Chris
Sorry,
Perkins,
Drew McGillivray.
asking that, advising that they were
And,
putting together
you know
a
what,
team
these
of
guys are
a
on
team
this
to
conflict, putting
to
this
Ottawa
together
to assist
with their
Ottawa,
association.
and
So
asked
that
if
right
I
there,
would
that
be
witness
interested
tampering
in leading that
interesting,
team.
right?
He felt that
Very
I
interesting.
was a
As
good
we-
fit for it,
as
with my
we hear
background,
this, him asking
and
point to
he
the-
gave me
Tell
10
any of your
seconds
friends
to
and
say I
colleagues-
didn't want to do it.
Did you tell
I
any of
accepted
your
the
friends and
assignment,
colleagues
and
within
that very
OPS
night,
that at some time
packed a
prior to
bag
you
and
giving
headed to,
testimony here today,
Aurelia
that you were approached by
for a
someone
briefing
who wanted you to
following.
give certain evidence that was
And
not
the
true?
following morning, what time was the briefing?
Thank you.
I believe it was about 9 a.m.
You got Jeff Everly as well at the
Who
B4.
attended?
Of course, Jeff, he was on.
Commissioner
actually.
Creek was
He came
there,
on our
Deputy
screen,
Commissioner
did a through and
Harkins,
Cut that up to about 20 minutes.
Superintendent
worth
Mike
watching. Check that out.
McDonnell was present.
So there you go. That's
Uh,
pretty interesting right there,
Superintendent
isn't
Craig
it? I think
Abrams
that's
was
pretty
on,
interesting. I'm not sure what that
video
means,
link.
but that
I
does
believe
mean something.
perhaps the commissioner's executive officer may have been present as
Throw that
well.
out there
But
right now.
I don't get-
Maybe they know
And we
something
just
we don't.
this morning heard from
That's Trish
Superintendent
Ferguson.
Abrams.
I don't know
Now,
what's going on. It's kind of,
Could we call up
kind of
the
weird. It's kind of weird. Anyways, we'll
witness
get back
will
to that.
say
I'll
number
put that later on, but that
OPP
is something.
50792.
All right, there you go. So we've seen Trish Ferguson.
Now, a
We've
chief
seen
party, we have,
Greg
the commission has
Adams, who's
received,
up with that.
and
Morrissey
will
was the only
say,
man that I think had real integrity. Just
going to be shown on
put
the
it out there,
screen.
boom, boom, boom.
I just wanted to ask you,
A
do
very
you
sheepish
recall
no,
when
says
this
Margot.
Wednesday was first prepared?
You can see she's wondering to Smith says.
It was started while I was still in Ottawa.
Or at least it says, yes, she knows.
When
it's
in
very
Ottawa?
anonymous.
During the month of February.
It's anonymous.
My supervisor, Deputy Commissioner
Very hard to
Harkins,
say.
had suggested that,
Could even time
start
some
putting my mind
business
to
streams of full power,
developing
yes,
or preparing a will statement for the events leading up to and to the conclusion in Ottawa.
Research.
I started it with
So
high
they're really
intentions
hard
of
to tell
catching
what's
up and keeping it live, but
Second note of major problems.
within a few hours, my
There you go.
schedule was overtaken.
Let's take a couple
And
minutes
so
of
I
your pen.
needed
If you
one
can
page done while I was in Ottawa, and I completed it when I went back to my regular duties in North Bay.
And when did you complete it?
First week of
Oh, no, we're back.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Now, tell us about the nature of your assignment. What was the mandate?
Well, the mandate was to provide Ottawa police support. I was given a broad range to ask for anything I needed. I received from the start of the deployment to the conclusion of deployment.
Hi, honey girl.
Not just my organization, because I was an OPP officer leading a team, an integrated team from multiple organizations. So it wasn't just OPP. It wasn't about the OPP. But I was given incredible support to ensure that we got what we needed, understanding the complexities of the events in Ottawa and the evolving events that are happening both provincially and nationally.
Right. So a moment ago, you were starting to tell us about this involving, among others, Commissioner Parikh of the OPP. Tell us about that briefing. What was discussed?
Well, I got an overview from Superintendent Abrams as to the State of the Union in Ottawa. Concern was there wasn't a plan. They were asking for a lot of resources. but there was no concrete plan in terms of how those resources were going to be utilized. There was dysfunction. There was loss of confidence and faith being displayed by the public. The narrative in the media was certainly slanted. There was no, in terms of the protest and by the protesters. Generally, it was a crisis in Ottawa.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the purpose was to support.
One of my most common phrases that I uttered throughout my time is in Ottawa with their senior executive, their officers, is we're here to help. And
what kind of help?
Whatever they need, but we were there to help build and complement any plans and direction that they had. There was never an intent, and this was explicit in my assignment. We were not going to Ottawa to take over command and control of the event. We were going there to support them. Certainly there was a goal to integrate or unify commands. This is an event that was clearly now beyond the capability of one signal organization just by its size and the need for resources. It stretched well beyond what Ottawa Police themselves could provide, which in my world, that's generally the kickoff for developing like a unified or an integrated command with others. That was the focus, to get there to have a team of dedicated people, of which I only knew one of the people that were assigned to me. I was going to be meeting these people that evening when I arrived. I was given a contact with the Ottawa Police, and later that morning I got in my vehicle and I started making my way.
Right, so you were in Orillia at 9 a.m. and by 5:35 that afternoon you were in a meeting with the members of the OPS, right?
That's correct.
Who did you meet with at that 5:35 p.m. meeting?
Well, I know I had someone taking minutes for that meeting. I know Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson, who I'd known previously, was at the meeting. Superintendent Patterson. There was a number of other folks with them, both on conference and video link. I know that initially, even in my own minutes, it reflected that Chief Slowly was present at the meeting because that was on the invite, but he did not make that meeting due to emergency family.
It was delayed, right?
I don't recall him joining. The minutes don't reflect any comments or whatsoever from the chief. My recollection is he did not join the meeting at all.
All right. Now we heard from Deputy Chief Ferguson from the OPS yesterday. I believe she said that the former chief was delayed, but he did join by teleconference or some other means of remote communication.
And that is very possible. As I said, I reviewed the minutes from the meeting. When you look at all the minutes that we took throughout the event, it's very clear, in my humble opinion, there was certainly no indication from those minutes that he was there, but it's very possible that he did join.
Right. Now, if we scroll down, this will say to the next page. Right. So the first dark bullet. Planning team held its first meeting at 17:35 hours from RCMP headquarters with the OPS. All OPS were on video or conference call. Also note that counsel for the OPS, Christine Hunnell, was present. Do you recall her being present by video conference?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's talk about what was discussed at that meeting. Tell us what happened.
We started the meeting by just doing the introductions of those that were available from my team. My team are still not all in Ottawa. They were still arriving. But we did have Inspector Tim Skinner from the York Region Police. One of my planners from our emergency unit in Australia, Brad Taylor, was present. Superintendent Phil Liu from the RCMP, and Sergeant, now Staff Sergeant Darwin Tetral from the RCMP as well was present. You know, we stated our objective. We're there to help. What do you need? We need a plan. We'll start building on. We're there to help building on what your objectives are. And they proceeded to give us a broad overview of their concept of operations for the occupation. And it was just that. It was a concept of operations. We had lots of questions. We received an update from Superintendent Patterson, and he was the event commander at that time, about things that were on the horizon with some potential arrests and some strategic takebacks, if you will, in the downtown core. Listening intently just to find out. Our goal, start to finish in the meeting, is to learn as much as we possibly could. You can only help when you have a true understanding for what the needs are, and to understand those needs. And we left that meeting with a commitment from Ottawa Police that they would provide plans to us. We asked for e-versions, whatever version they could get to us would be very helpful, so that we could see what they have on paper in terms of their plan, and then what we would reasonably need to do to complement that plan. Also, it was critical for us to have access to them, the Ottawa Police. We're there to work with them to get through this. So we wanted an established liaison who had the authority to access and provide the information that we would need.
Was there any discussion at that meeting about the nature of integration between the OPS and the group that you're bringing?
It was raised by me at that meeting if they would consider integration or a uniform command, because there's inherent benefits with it. You know, from my experience, just about all of my major events that I've been involved, what we ended up having here in Ottawa with an integrated command has been my experience. You know, whether it's a presidential visit, you still have the police of jurisdiction who have the lead, or the RCMP because of their IPP responsibilities or internationally protected person responsibilities under legislation. But when you call on multiple organizations to participate, they bring their command structure, you inject your advice to them, you work as a team. Ultimately, someone is leading that and makes the final call. But as an integrated team, you're all on the same page. You're not working in silos. You're working collectively with the same objectives and goals.
Let's talk about the members of this team that you were assembling and bringing to Ottawa. It's called Integrated Planning Cell or Integrated Planning Group.
They call it that was the assignment, to create this integrated planning cell. We quickly deviated from the word cell and just called it our integrated planning group. Okay. Yes, I was provided with planners from Toronto Police Service, two planners, Sergeant Arlene Duffy and Constable Isabel Etier. Their background and their credentials were impressive in terms of emergency planning. I had Inspector Tim Skinner, who I already mentioned, from York Region Police. His background is in public order maintenance and command and control. Again, a wealth of knowledge. I had Tom Warfield from the PL Regional Police Service. Tom came to us with the background in case management to ensure that we were capturing the best that we could in a very kinetic and dynamic environment, as much of the information, versions, and whatnot as we went forward. We had Brad Taylor, John extraordinaire from the OPP. Brad is a civilian member, but his expertise is in emergency planning. Rely heavily on Brad for his expertise. Then, of course, we had the two RCMP officers, Phil Liu, who became my right arm throughout the event, Phil's background was in Major Incident Command, national standards, had an extensive background in training and developing and mentoring people in the incident command world. And Darwin Tetrell, who to this day has impressed me incredibly with his leadership in public order command.
So
he's renowned nationally and connected internationally as it relates to public order maintenance.
Right. So yesterday, when we spoke to Deputy Chief Ferguson testified, and she explained the process of developing a plan, an operational plan. She referred to subject matter experts. So this group of people that you're bringing to Ottawa, are these subject matter experts then in the various areas?
Yes, sir. In fact, I would say that I was the only one that wasn't a subject matter expert.
All right.
I was just brought there to bring this team together and get them working and lead their way through this.
Right. Now, we've heard from some witnesses about the importance of operational plans, and I just want your view on what are the components, the key components of a good operational plan?
Well, the key components, have to align with your objectives and your goals and that drives your strategies in terms of what that operation is meant to do. Certainly, you need to have a clear understanding in creating a mission for the event. The mission statement is something that in every event that I've ever been involved in, whether it was a peaceful event or
Honey, get down.
Is something that is critical that your members, your employees, your officers on the ground, everybody is in line with the mission of the plan. From there, commander's objectives, and then what are we looking to achieve with this plan, and then every single aspect. So if it's a public order issue, you would need the key aspect there is the public order consult and a good idea. Okay, what is the nature and scope of the event, and what kind of public order plan would we need to inject with it? You need crime, you need victims, you need key things like messaging, communication, logistics is key. And in fact, at major events from a policing perspective, when we debrief, often are successful or fail on the backs of good, solid logistics support. When you get people there, what are you doing with them? Where are they staying? How are we feeding them? What's their duties? How are they being briefed? That all has to be fleshed out so that when you have people arrive, you have a seamless operation.
Right. Now, we've heard references to the overall or overarching plan and sub-plans for specialized areas. So were those what you were trying to describe to us?
Absolutely. And I was speaking with people that I had confidence also were on the same page and understood that.
Right. And in terms of an overall plan or overarching plan, does that refer to something that takes you from start to finish?
Yes, sir.
What about contingencies?
Well, that's always built into your planning. When you look at public order as an example, it's filled with contingency plans. If this is the intent, if it doesn't work, this is our main action plan, our direct action plan, and then there would be an alternate action plan if they have to deviate.
And command and control structure, should that be reflected in the plan
Absolutely.
itself? Why is that important?
Again, when you're developing plans for major events, the ultimate goal is to succeed. And in order to succeed, there needs to be, we're police officers, we're creatures of habits, there needs to be clear lines of communication. There needs to be clear command code. Who is in charge? Who is responsible for this? Right down the line, because in major events, you might have a major event commander right down to a commander on the ground, all have distinct roles. Roles and responsibilities are absolutely key to get you through the event in a successful way.
At the time you arrived on February 8th, did you know if the OPS had experienced planners like the ones you brought to Ottawa to help them develop this kind of a plan?
I was making an assumption based on my experience with OPS that in fact they did have that depth. Although some of the ones that I had worked with in the past were absent and I learned had retired. And because, as I said, the OPS have always been renowned. We've been there to support them countless times in major events. We're different organizations. We have different structures. But make no mistake about it, they were good at what they did.
Right. So you told us that on that first meeting, at that first meeting, you were shown this strategic concept of operations document, but you didn't have a copy, right? You weren't given a copy at that meeting.
If there was references to it on that date, I do believe I may have been given a copy, but.
And you said you asked for more.
We asked for more, and they indicated that there was a nod from Superintendent Patterson that any plans that were approved would be, in fact, supplied to us.
Okay, so we go to the next day, February the 9th, at 7 a.m. There's a
Stop,
note
buddy.
say that you weren't getting the plans yet. And we go to page 3 of the will say. The second bullet. Oops. That's right. Maybe scroll down. Is this page 3? Oh, that's right. Sorry. Scroll up, please. Okay, the second bullet, discussion after the discussion around injunctions, and then stressed we needed to develop a plan.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I'm looking at the wrong page. Okay, I found it now. So go down again. I apologize. After February, the heading February the 9th, do you see the second bullet?
Yes.
And the last two sentences. Learn that everything had to go to the chief before it could be actioned or released to our team. Now, I just wanted to ask you about that. What did you mean by this?
Well, we learned very, very early in our time in Ottawa that the chief was very much engaged, and that ultimately everything that they intended to do had to be approved by him.
Who told you this?
I heard it from just about every OPS employee that I dealt with there in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
It was very clear to me in my dealings with their senior officers, Chris Riem, whose name is there, Rob Drummond, who was at times working with us in different aspects, Trish Ferguson. I didn't deal a whole lot during my initial days with Deputy Chief Bell, but certainly it was very, very clear that Chief Slowly was to be informed of and approving all aspects of the operation.
Now, in fairness to the former chief, you did tell us that there was some departure of senior officers from OPS. So isn't it quite understandable that he wanted more things to go through him to ensure that important decisions are made with the benefit of his input?
I don't lay blame, sir. I look at it. This was an incredible event unfolding in his city. It was the loss of confidence that you were seeing in the media, in the police service, undoubtedly brought a lot of stress to bear. That he wanted to be looped in on everything that's going on. I can't fault him.
And you also mentioned earlier that the OPS counsel, Christian Hunnard, was present.
Yes, I did find that to be, from my experience, to be a little bizarre.
Why is that?
Well, needless to say, I've been involved in a lot of major operations over the years, and there's always consult with legal on our legal authorities and the different tactics we use, make sure that we're sound within in the law. However, it was a first-time experience to have counsel actually sit through operational discussions.
But wouldn't it be helpful to have a lawyer around in case any legal questions arise?
Well, again, as it became more protracted, the event, I suppose it could be, where you would have counsel there immediately to give advice back on legal points that were being discussed. But as we proceeded, it certainly came across a little bit more than that. That she was tantamount to an approver of the action or the plan, which was very concerning. It's police operations.
Okay, so that was your, that's the morning of the 9th when you were still looking for a plan and not planning yet. And then that, around noon that day, you got to meet with the OPS team again, right? Where did you go?
Well, we had called for a meeting to discuss things more broadly. And it was downtown Ottawa at the Ottawa Police Station, 474 Elgin Street. It was in an upstairs boardroom. We couldn't bring all of our team. I would have liked to, but we were somewhat restricted, and we were still making plans, so we were mindful of all these things still going on. So we brought a smaller part of the team, including Craig Abrams, who also joined our team initially, along with Mike Curtis, two OPP officers who had been in Ottawa working already, assisting Ottawa, one from a POU perspective, one more from a strategic command perspective. Myself, Tetral, Skinner, and Phil Liu, and there was another RCP officer, I believe his name is Charles Mason, was present with us at meeting, along with the OPS command team and their council.
Okay, well, tell us what happened at that meeting.
Well, again, we discussed two different documents that they provided us, their strategic concept of operations.
That was the same one that you saw yesterday?
Yeah, very similar. And yes, I believe it was the same. They're a broader overarching kind of concept of operations for the truck demonstration.
That's a lot of fucking sitting and watching for that virtual thing, eh?
We were given asking for numbers. There was
and you know that they're going to be like,
from the Ottawa Police
Jeremy
Service
said, I can't wait to hear your takeaways from it. So that you know that they're going to be like expecting us to
sustain operations. And the number, if I'm not mistaken, was 516 FTEs or police officers to sustain operations at all the checkpoints that they needed. We had a lot of debate about that. Ultimately, there's some math issues that we came to terms with. But again, our goal is there to completely understand. We didn't just go in blank and say, what do you need? Here you go. So we had discussions about that. And then we had discussions about, an overview provided to us by Superintendent Patterson of an operation at Rideau and Sussex that they were contemplating. My notes reflect that it was scheduled for 4 with a possibility of being moved up.
Did you see that Sean Zimmer's on like a 12-month house arrest?
And that night.
Is he? Yeah, I don't. It's like he's.
As I noted, I brought those that I did for a specific purpose.
He's only allowed to leave his house for.
We had discussed
I don't know if it's
prior
4
to
hours a day or 4 hours a week, but like
team.
basically just sitting
You
at
have input to
groceries
give it.
I wonder what it's for though. I think that's for something else. I don't think that's for.
Let's not pull the whole thing back.
But the interesting thing
So
too,
Darwin Tetral asked if he could speak when he was being presented this thing.
You know that day Alex was like, oh, you might want to follow this account, that account, whatever. I went and followed Clay and Liz and all that.
The number
and I'm like,
in my notes
mutual
was
followers, and I
he
clicked
said,
on it, and Sean's
based
in
on
there.
his knowledge of POU, when you
He
look at
doesn't
the
follow
dynamics of this
anybody.
event, the number
So
of
he must have
areas
something
that were
to.
blockaded.
I know, right?
And the work
You know what I
that
noticed,
was done,
though?
we would need
I'm thinking to myself, I'm
approximately
like, does Sean like
800
work for these
POU
guys, or do you guys
officers
work under Sean
to
and they're trying to
effectively
get
dismantle
because
this
if that
protest.
happens, I could have went to Sean.
But furthermore,
Yeah.
and the key thing for me, hearing from a
You know what
subject
I
matter
noticed though?
expert with
You know how
his
Sean always
level of
wears like that
experience,
Patriot clothing
is
line?
that once you start
So
this
does Clay.
operation, you should not
I was
stop.
like creeping Liz's
And their
Instagram and like
intention,
all the pictures of
as
Clay
it
just
was
like
presented to
casually
us,
with
was
his
to kind of
family
do it
wearing
chunk,
Patriot.
to use
Yeah,
the words
that's
that
like
they
a
used,
really big
chunk by
job.
chunk.
Stop.
And there was
That
recognition
girl.
that it would
That's
be
like a really big
resource
Yeah.
intensive, a significant demand and resources
Yeah, yeah.
to do it that way.
It's basically like the
But we
brand
didn't have
freedom
a significant number of resources.
That's what I
And
mean.
the best advice and evidence,
Yeah,
or sorry,
what's
best
going on?
advice I
You
was
just messaged me
receiving
today saying,
right at that meeting from our
you're probably
SME
thinking of dogs,
is
doing
that
whatever. I just wanted to
strategically,
say I'm
you're
really
going
sorry
to do
when I
this
was in Kansas
appropriately.
City. I came home.
When you start,
I've been playing
the
catch up
period of
ever
action,
since. I want you to know
you should not stop. You need to
more
start moving
interested than I've ever
systematically
been, and
through
we're
all
gonna
the
get this
points
happen.
to shut it
Okay,
down.
good, man. I just worried
And he
that.
suggested that we pump the brakes. Let's stop this. Let's not proceed with this operation. And ultimately, that is what happened. Although I did have conversations with the incident commander who was assigned to the operation just by happenstance.
Is that Burnett?
Paul Burnett, yes. And ultimately, that operation did not happen. But that was back to the meeting. That was is inject into it. There was a lot of discussion about resources because he raised up that number, and again, the number sticks out to me because it ultimately was the number of POU approximately that we needed to successfully dismantle. So Darwin Petro is from the National Capital Region. He lives in this area. He runs these programs nationally for public order.
One day a week, I'm
He is
doing
a
like
public
one
order person
room of the
himself.
house, like a really good
And,
clean. And by the end of the
given
week,
a
like
lot of
everything
thought
has
to
been
understanding
cleaned other
the
than, like,
zones
just
which
being
had been
like
presented to the day before in terms of
I think
the
that'll help me,
checkpoints and key areas of
not get
concern in the
sold
red
wrong.
zone. So, I thought,
Honey,
very clearly, he's already put
like, I'm
some
still fucking
significant
eating this.
insight
Do
in
you
terms
mind?
of what needs to be done to successfully shut this down. So Chief Slowly, very
Pretty lucky that you're
passionately, and
fucking
very
cute.
concerned about the reliability of getting resources. He was very concerned that we would come through. He wanted guarantees with no caveats that if you're going to say you're going to give us X, you're going to give us X, period. No questions asked. We just stressed that we're building a plan. We have the support of our organizations to get it, what is needed to develop a plan to successfully shut this down.
I want to go this weekend.
All right, so you've covered a lot of grounds there. Let's try to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. I was gonna
First,
say, I may
with
or may not
respect
go into this
to
weekend.
the
I'm fucking
numbers,
sore. I did
as it
shoulders
relates
today,
to the
and I've
legal
been
assessment
putting off shoulders
operation.
all
I just
week
want to be
because my
clear,
shoulder is
because
actually
we heard
like
some
fucked.
evidence
I
about
can't even put my
doubling the
shirt on
number,
without it,
but
like,
here,
I don't know
it's
what I
quite the
did, but
opposite,
I
isn't
fucking
it?
up
Like,
last week doing
they were
shoulders.
preparing for an action.
So I did shoulders today. I just went like
planning
really
for
light with
using
it, but it was
400,
fucking killing me. I'm
and
like,
you were
what
telling
the
us that according to the subject matter experts
So,
in your group,
this guy
you're
knows
going to need
Jim.
800.
No, they didn't suggest the 400. I think that was Craig Abrams' evidence that
I
he
know
thought
that
that Tetra suggested you would need 400 to do it. In my view, in my notes reflect that Tetra said you need 800 to effectively, because when you start this POU action, when you start kinetic action in this way,
My friend that
you
works
can't
out
stop.
here.
All right.
Which means when you look at the number of areas that needed to be control need to be taken back, that was his immediate assessment, and that proved to be very accurate as our planning assumption of that day, and as we then engaged all the SMEs to develop that plan, it was exactly what was needed.
Does that go back to something we talked about earlier, planning from beginning to end and anticipate the different?
It absolutely does. Because we did have a number of times throughout my time in Ottawa where there was deviations, sudden deviations from the plan that would impact the broader plan if we were to do it. But yes, planning from end to end is always your goal. You always like to have lots of time to plan. We were planning in crisis mode and doing it as quickly
I have
as
this girl that
possible,
follows me around at the gym
and
too.
trying to
I think she's
consider
in high
everything
school.
that needs to be
The other day I saw
considered
her changing in
from
the
the
change room and she was
residents to
putting on like a
victims
high
to
school uniform. I'm
cold
like,
weather, the
I don't think, I
conditions,
actually kind of feel bad for her
everything
now that I see that because she probably doesn't know what she's doing and she's probably like
Now,
maybe looking for some guidance or
you
something.
also said something about.
But she like, I'll go to one machine and she'll go to like the one beside me, and then I'll go and do this and she'll go and do this beside me, and I'm like,
At page
and then I always
3.
notice her staring at me, like if I'm like doing something, she'll like stare at me and like watch me do it. I'm like, why is this girl staring?
Sorry, page 3 at the very bottom. So here, Chief Slowly was very passionate about the impact the demonstration was having on the city, and he was looking to break occupations, however they had limited ability to affect this due to baseline levels of staffing. I offered that we were there to ensure that he had what was needed to sustain operations, but needed a plan. He advised they were working on last-minute plans. Does that reflect what happened at that meeting?
It does, sir.
So let me ask you this. As I understand it, then, You were offering to help, and then you said you needed a plan. But putting this in context, because this happened on February the 9th, right? So we're already more than a week into the protest, and the commission has heard evidence how that has caused significant social impact on residents and so on. And if the suggestion is that you need a plan before we can send resources, isn't that problematic? Because they may not at that stage have even the resources to do the planning. So how do they get more resources?
Well, that's a very loaded question. Essentially, you need a plan to be able to communicate with police leaders. When you're asking for resources from around the province, and in this case, around the country, you need to be able to articulate what that need is and why that need exists. And in doing that, it's always about, what's my officers going to be doing when they get there? What are the logistics? What are the plan, the briefings? Everything is something that you always provide. We're in a state right now that, I learned really quickly that staffing was an issue for OPS. Staffing is an issue with just about every policing organization out there for a myriad of reasons. So as a regional commander coming into this from another region where you're going to be called upon to provide resources to supplement an operational plan, you're pulling from resources that you have available to police your communities. And oftentimes in a lot of my detachments, we're already at our base level. So when you're still, because of a crisis there, you're going to pull them only when they're needed, not sit around waiting to know what they're going to do when they get there. Plan is absolutely critical. And it can be a concept, because we developed the concept of operations within 48 hours of being in Ottawa, a concept of operations that we ultimately use throughout the event.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have that and know that you're building this, and we're going to need to staff those up. So let's start preparing that. But it can't just be, I need this number. You need to know what these people are going to be doing when they get there. Right down to where are they staying and who's feeding them. We're human beings. You need those basics in place. None of that was in place.
Right. So let's take a look at this plan that they did show you on the 9th at this meeting. Could we call up, please, OPP 50774?
I don't know what your plan is for Monday. You're probably going to be broadcasting this stuff again. But the kids don't have school, and I told them I'd take them to come back. So. Yeah.
So if we go to page 91, please.
Okay, I gotta ask you a something quick. No, you got unlimited smoke.
Sorry, Counselor, can you repeat the page?
Page 91, please.
91, thank
Yes.
you.
So can you just not grab them?
So looking at the cover, does this resemble the
that's why I
document
think
that you
that's
saw
okay.
at
The
that
other day,
meeting
and I
on
just put it in for a little
February
bit.
9th?
Okay.
And if we go to the mission statement at page 96.
Here it is. So there's more.
So the mission statement simply reads, to end the unlawful elements of the Ottawa truck demonstration and restore safe and open neighborhoods and businesses. What do you think of this mission statement?
Well, it's a mission statement. It wasn't broad enough for my liking. It was just really focused and not encompassing the broader event. My experience with mission statements, safety needs to be factored in. Your officers need to know, because every officer needs to know. It's drilled into them. Every briefing, the mission for the operation is drilled into them. So safety for the residents, safety for officers, safety for the protesters, charter rights often are embedded, that you have all those considerations in a more broader mission statement.
Now, we heard from Deputy Ferguson yesterday that by February the 13th, your group has collaborated with Superintendent Bernier of the OPS to come up with another plan. So can we call up that other plan? And the number is...
That'll be like edible weed. we'll make some, maybe we'll do that this weekend.
OPP 401851.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
OPP 401851. Can we see the entire front page, please? Or maybe the next page has the date. There we have it. Do you recall this as being the plan that was developed by the 13th?
Yes, sir. And that is my signature on it.
Okay. Can we go to the mission statement at page 8, please? So this mission statement reads, using an integrated response, the Ottawa Police and policing partners will keep the peace, enforce legislation, and maintain public safety for the duration of the Ottawa truck demonstration with the utmost respect to the individual's charter of rights and freedoms, with priority on community and emergency services personnel, safety, and well-being. How does this one compare with the one we saw before?
What is a mission? The other one's more an objective. This is the broader mission of the entire integrated response. When it's all done, we'll have accomplished this to ensure safety for all, maintain public safety for the duration, etc. So the mission is your very high level, your strategic direction to go.
Now, you said a moment earlier that the other one, the shorter one, wasn't so much to your liking, but is it a matter of subjective preference or is it something more objective?
I would say no. It's more objective. I mean, I go back to my training in incident command, my involvement in multiple North American leader summits, presidential visits, G8, G20, First Nations issues, blockades. No, we've always been taught very early that mission needs to encompass that broader range to ensure how you're going to accomplish your goals and what you're open to accomplish.
Okay. So your group came and 4 days later, after the February 9th meeting, you have this plan developed collaboratively with the OPS. So I guess my question is, if this can be done within a number of days after your group arrived, why didn't you come earlier?
Well, that's not a question that I can really answer. I leave the day that I was asked to go. Before then, I was a commander for the Northeast region. I was alive to what was going on with the convoy because it came through my region. We had an ops plan for that. But that's a question that perhaps should be posed to somebody else.
Yes, I'm sorry. It is not a fair question to you. You were chosen to lead the project. You weren't the one who came up with the idea. But looking back, knowing what we know now about the OPS capacity to develop something like this, would you agree that it would have been very helpful for a group of experts like yours to offer assistance to the OPS, let's say, the Monday after the first weekend instead of... All right. Let's talk about... now, you said the February 9th plan that was presented to your group missed a lot of the key elements of a good plan. In your view, the February 13th plan, was that good enough?
It was getting there. I mean, we were, as I mentioned, when you're building a plan in crisis, you're ensuring that you are encompassing all key elements to that plan, knowing that there is literally things are going to be continuing to be built into that plan once the event is even finished. Yeah, because it's based on your concept. You know what you're going to do and how you need to resource it, but you're still continuing. The plan will continue to evolve through the duration of the event.
Right. Now, one of the things that you also told us that arose during this February 9th meeting is the former chief's request for, he was seeking some assurances. He was asking for some kind of a guarantee that the resources would arrive, right? And I take it that you disagree that that kind of guarantees could be given?
It wasn't that I disagreed that the guarantees could be given. I think we need the context of the conversation. There's debate about some misrepresentation of numbers in the media that he had with Superintendent Abrams. There was discussion because he made it very clear, from my view, in conversation I had, that there were people in the ministry that wanted him to fail. And he had sources in the ministry that were letting him know that, people wanted him to fail. And I just assured him that, well, we're not those. We're here to help.
Well, what about the argument that to plan properly, one needs to know a little more about what kind of resources you can count on? So, for example, if the OPS were to develop a plan based on having 1,800 officers available, that plan wouldn't have been very helpful if those people are not actually coming, right?
Well, I'm going to suggest the opposite. If they had a plan, an operational plan that encompassed 1,800 officers with duties assigned in a rotating cycle, then we would have been refined likely that plan to ensure that it was sound, and we could have done that fairly quickly and started our deployment, because we actually started deploying officers in our team pretty much on day one as needs were arriving.
All right. Now, if we go back to the will say, please. Document number is OPP 50792. Page 4. Go down, please. I'm looking for this. Okay, yeah. Do you see the sentence, the overall tone?
Yes.
The overall tone of this meeting was somewhat unprofessional and slowly, was very clearly under tremendous pressure to act, and was very suspicious of levels of commitment from police agencies. Tell us more why you said that.
Well, as I said, when we attended this meeting, we fully anticipated to, and I don't look for thanks, but expected that we were going to be welcomed there, that they was going to be happy that we were there. The meeting, the meeting overall, the tone, I would say, was very antagonistic. It was disrespectful. In terms of we're there to help, and he's just not trusting. It was very clear he had confidence issues in what we were there to do.
It wasn't what you expected.
Certainly not what we expected. I think just about everyone on my team at some point in time within the minutes of leaving the meeting received apologies from other members of his command for his behavior.
Right. Now, if we scroll down on the same page a little further, we may go into the next page now. Looking for the sentence that starts with after the chief and his team left. Right, thank you. After the chief and his team left the room, Inspector Debbie Palmer remained with our team, and we again pressed for copies of their plans, e-versions, and she stressed the chief's comments that some aspects of their plan had not yet been approved. Tell us.
Well, I want to stress as well, notwithstanding the tone of the meeting, it did not change our result. Debbie Palmer was the person that was initially, the name that was initially provided to me as our go-to person. She was replaced the following morning by Chris Rielm. But that's what the chief had meant. There still was some last minute planning going on. And she said she would do her best to get it for us. But, in the end, we really never did receive a plan from the OPS.
Right. So at the end of this meeting on February 9th, was there any agreement between the OPS and the Integrated Planning Group on any operational plans going forward?
Well, we just committed to continue to build and work with this team and to build a plan to complement what their objectives were from their ConOps that they provided us.
And is there any agreement about the degree of integration?
No.
Now, we expect that we may hear evidence from Mr. Slowly that to the extent his approval is required, he gave all the approval necessary on February 9th. What would you say to that?
I obviously wasn't there because I received no such information of approvals. I think it's reflected in the follow-up meetings we have when I would call them to say, what's your status? We need a meeting before we can, we need a meeting for me to understand that before we can move forward. So there was no implied, certainly no implied or explicit approvals for anything.
Commissioner, I saw you looking at me. Is that a sign?
If it's a good time
It is
for
a good
lunch,
time.
we'll take an hour for lunch and come back after. Very perspicacious on this notice. Okay, so they're going to break for lunch and we'll come back in an hour.
The commission is in recess for 1 hour. La commission est levée pour 1 heure.
Well, I got some good news for people who've been watching this. The Trucking for Freedom team has decided to release their Chapter 2 version a day early. So I haven't even seen this yet. It just came out, but I'm going to stream that right now while we wait for this to come, the Public Order Emergency Commission to come back from their break. Might as well check it out. So enjoy.
The science is very clear. The best way through this pandemic is to get people vaccinated. That's how we end the disruptions to our supply chains caused by this global pandemic. That's how we get back to the things we love to do.
2 years into the global COVID-19 pandemic, almost 90% of Canadians were vaccinated, and yet Canada remained one of the most locked down countries in the world. Every Canadian province had implemented vaccine passports. Unvaccinated Canadians were barred from restaurants, cafes, and internal travel. Some were denied life-saving medical procedures. Students were threatened, banned from campus grounds, and deregistered from classes at colleges and universities. Vaccines had been mandated for the federal workforce and federally regulated transportation sectors.
Bottom line, Proof of vaccination will be required by no later than the end of this month for all federal employees.
Rolling school closures,
I'm going to tell you that these measures will have an effect on our schools as well.
the Omicron wave hit, affecting vaccinated and unvaccinated people equally.
Omicron case counts are rising exponentially across the province.
The rules are very simple. To travel, you've got to be vaccinated.
It was discovered that the vaccinated were more susceptible to infection.
The data are showing that vaccination can actually increase the risk of being infected with the Omicron version of this virus.
I think the main issue is whether the agencies have the authority to issue these.
A growing climate of hostility increased against the unvaccinated as if they were the reason the pandemic and associated restrictions remained in effect. Late in the federal election of 2021, Justin Trudeau added a new pledge to his campaign platform: the implementation of mandatory vaccinations for cross-border truckers.
Truck drivers, like all other travelers, will have to be fully vaccinated.
We knew that something was going to happen once they brought in the cross-border trucking mandate.
As the result of a prolonged lockdown culture filled with mandates, a movement was born from an unexpected place. Little did we all know that government policy, landlocked truckers, and a growing frustration in the Canadian public would birth a movement. A movement that would shake the very foundation of Canadian society. It was a perfect storm.
My name is Bridget Belton, and I used to be a cross-border reefer driver until mandates came out. I bought the truck during COVID. Never thought I'd be sidelined as an essential worker. I'm the founder of Convoy to End Mandates, that was more popularly known as the Freedom Convoy 2022.
Today we take our country back. Yeah, now from here, it's just like I'm sharing it. It's real, it's raw, Canada.
I think Bridget Belding, who was the original person who was affected by the mandates, she and Chris Barber were the ones that I think originally came together and wanted to do something.
Back in April or May of 2020 was the first run-in I had with the border. I gave them my email address and phone number. Then I started getting constant messages. You just came back into Canada. You need to quarantine, or I'd leave Canada. You need to quarantine. This is where it really started. She said, you should know better. I said, for what? She goes, you get your load from Canada. You go to your destination. and you come back and you do not leave your cab. How do I eat? How do I shower?
Not one company out here allowed us to stop, use their showers. They didn't allow us to sit in their restaurants and eat. We had to walk up to McDonald's, Tim Hortons, you name the fast food restaurant. We were treated like scum.
They tell you right on the door, we are not providing you with exemption notes. We're not. So he said, well, then I guess you're in violation. Enjoy your time with Windsor Police. It gave me the chance to go through TikTok that night. It gave me the chance to look at people like Chris and hear them.
Well, guys, appreciate everybody sharing this new username and account, because the old one, it looks like it's on its way out. Momentum's growing for this drive across Canada like crazy. My phone rings all day long with people from everywhere wanting to support us.
I looked at my husband, I said, we need to do a convoy. And he goes, honey, truckers can't agree on a free cup of coffee.
Guys, on the 24th, 25th, whenever we're coming through on this convoy, I'm going to say, I'm excited to have this highway number 1 lit.
I heard the passion in his voice. I heard it as passionate as mine. And I was done. I didn't know if I could fight. But hearing the rest of them talking about it, we could do this. We can do something. I just have to get people on my side. And I have to let them know why it's so important to me to have these mandates gone, and why people shouldn't be suffering at the hands of their government. It wasn't really political. It was just mandates. That's all.
In the last weeks of 2021 and the early days of 2022, many Canadian truckers, small business owners, and social media influencers started speaking about freedom convoys. Some were planning local demonstrations, while others were planning a trans-Canada pilgrimage to Canada's capital, Ottawa. Being grassroots, this movement was by its very nature disorganized. In the early days of 2022, an organization known as Canada Unity endeavored to communicate a clear plan on their website. It spread like wildfire.
So what's the questions? You could ask me a question?
I'm going to ask you.
Okay, ask
First of all, what's your name?
My name is James Potter, President and founder of Canada Unity Foundation. The support that the truckers were getting, because now they're standing up. They've been talking about it. Now it's time.
I was asked as a favor to assist in organizing the East Coast convoy to head into Ottawa. I didn't know anything about the convoy until maybe 10, 12 days before it left. Martin was a part of Canada Unity, which is the only organization that I knew existed when I went to Ottawa.
Martin Broadman, my partner, he's vice president of Canada Unity.
I didn't know Bridget Belding or Chris at the time. I didn't know Pat King at the time. As a road captain, I was on a lot of Zoom calls with what would eventually become the board.
I think we've got the south route, we've got the west route, and we've got the east route. So you got 3 routes. There's always been 3 routes. And we do have captains that are assigned right now throughout Canada. And those captains, I believe, would be the best people to bring forward.
So there was my first time experiencing any of the board members, including Pat and Tamara, and the people that ultimately I ended up getting to know a little bit in Ottawa.
Here she is, one and only. Say hello to Tamara.
Hi, everybody. Well, my name is Tamara. You might know me from GoFundMe. I put a post on my Facebook page this morning that said last Friday I got up, I went to work, I came home, I talked to Chris, made a Facebook page, started a GoFundMe account, and went off with my band to play a show. And wow, here we are. Here we are a week later, and my little GoFundMe is $1.1 million right now.
I get a message from the Women's Confederation of Trucking. She sent me this message about Canada Unity.
We have a multitude of wonderful truckers to choose from. Bridget is Sarnia.
And I was like, those are my dates. And she goes, I know, that's why I thought I'd send it to you. So I'm like, well, I'm going to call him up and he's going to change his dates. And that's exactly what I told James Bowder. You need to change your dates. And he goes, oh no, I'm not changing my dates. I said, well, then you can either join us or you can change your dates. But there's no sense in splitting this. And he was like, well, let's work together. We own Ottawa. I said, we're not going to Ottawa. He goes, what do you mean you're not going to Ottawa? I said, no. We are rolling in every city, in every town, in every province across Canada. After talking, he goes, you know, Pat King's been trying to get a hold of you. Who's Pat King?
To everybody out there, I'm so proud of you. We hit $1 million! You guys rocked it. Thank you so much to the people of Canada.
I had no idea who these people were. And he goes, let me get him on the phone. So Pat comes on the line. They sell me on this Ottawa deal. And I'm like, I don't know. I said, but I am going to talk to the rest of the team that's already in place and see what they say. That was January 12th.
I thought it was provincial from where you were from, is what I thought. And we went live with Pat King, and well, he broke the news that we were going to Ottawa.
On January 13th, there is a video, and we're going to Ottawa.
As the dates were set, Canadians from all corners of the country volunteered their time to help coordinate routes headed to the nation's capital. While the routes continued to grow, so did the traction of this movement.
Pilot Pat. I was one of the lead convoy pilot trucks from northern BC.
My name's Miranda Gager, and I am one of the road captains. I basically did all of the north of Highway 16 of Alberta and Saskatchewan.
I'm Ryan Mihilowicz. I was one of the road captains for Saskatchewan. A million phone calls later, we're on our way to Ottawa.
My name is Harold Jonker, and I had the honor and the privilege of being the road captain from Niagara region going to Ottawa.
My name is Joe. I was a Manitoba road captain for the Freedom Convoy.
I'm Dale Ince. I was road captain for Manitoba. I am a long-distance truck driver.
These captains and other volunteers across Canada stepped up to coordinate and bring awareness to their communities that a convoy to Ottawa was in motion. None, however, were prepared for the response they would receive. Even those who had planned prior convoys and freedom events were in disbelief by the amount of trucks that started to roll across Canada's northern climes.
147 trucks, and about 3 times that in light vehicle participation, so about 750 cars, vans, pickups, everything in between, like even little dinky cars.
Wow. So you're probably 1,000?
1,000 people strong, yeah.
A dozen transports left BC today to be joined by others as they make their way across the country. The group is pushing back against a vaccine mandate.
Somebody has to stand up for Canada, and the truckers are doing it.
It all started a couple days ago in Delta, BC. Truckers protesting vaccine mandates at the border. Now, as the convoy logs more kilometers, it's getting more support.
My name's Tom Quiggin. I'm a veteran. I served in a number of countries overseas. I've become a court expert on terrorism, court expert on the reliability of intelligence as evidence, and I've worked for a variety of government departments in sensitive intelligence roles. The work I did with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police at INSET, a lot of that involved protests. So, I mean, Ottawa, it's the nation's capital. You get all kinds of protests, some good, some crazy, some whatever. As the convoys first started to mobilize and move towards Ottawa, I started to recognize a series of patterns coming into place.
What started out as a single expression of demonstration
through what was called a Freedom Convoy involving vehicles from across Canada over the last several days, and particularly in the last 24 hours, has changed substantially.
There is increasing concern about violent online rhetoric supporting the convoy, and that those with extreme views are planning on attending.
As the truckers and other participants left BC at the start of the convoy, there was a noticeable discrepancy between social media and legacy media coverage of this event. A recurring tone and narrative began to take place.
My name is Rupa Subramanya, and I live in Ottawa, in the nation's capital. I'm a columnist for the National Post and for Nikkei Asia. The role of the news in an institutional sense is to inform the public as objectively and fairly as possible. What is important here is that you leave those biases behind and you approach a situation as objectively and fairly as possible without these ideological lenses.
The thing that told me without a doubt that the government was going to run a hate-filled, fifth-generation style information warfare against the convoy, against its own citizens, was as the convoy is rolling into town, but before it gets there, there's this headline comes out, Prime Minister Trudeau escapes town, has to be moved to secret location for protection, and a whole bunch of headlines just came out.
From what I saw here, there was being information warfare waged on the convoy and on Canadian citizens in general, and it has been for a while. So what they do is they put out misinformation. Everyone and their brother shares that in their groups and shares that in their groups, and it becomes this massive ripple out into the pond. And I would say over 95% of the information that I saw from the intelligence side was incorrect.
And I think that was kind of, from an intelligence perspective, that for me, before the convoy got there, that to me was the tone that was set.
The level of hateful rhetoric, of swastikas, of abuse towards their fellow citizens. There is not a right to incite violence, to perform acts of violence, or to spew hatred.
I kept getting these messages from my friends at top-notch publications, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and they would message me and they would say, Rupa, what is going on here? Why is there no on-the-ground reportage of what is happening in Canada?
I got trucking on my mind. There's a great big convoy trucking across Canada. Truckers, who were previously regarded as heroes when they were delivering vital goods and working during the lockdown, are now villains as they protest vaccine mandates. So why is no one in the mainstream media talking about it?
All we're hearing are these narratives, people's opinions, and it almost reads like this is exactly what Justin Trudeau was saying, and this is exactly what these reporters are saying.
Despite numerous attempts to spin the narrative surrounding the Freedom Convoy, an outpouring of support was felt across social media platforms and international networks in the early days of the convoy.
My name is Jerry Richard, and I live in Edmonton, Alberta. Very proud to be a Canadian, very proud to be an Albertan. When you see 600, 10,000, 50,000 semis going down the road, you tend to pay attention.
The routes in BC there, we got, it started off at Prince Rupert, all the way into Calgary, Alberta, where we met up with the Southern Convoy that came in from Vancouver.
Happy Canada!
So what's the next big city that we're going to be going to?
Medicine Hat is the next big stop once we get rolling. And obviously we got enough media here. They'll be able to catch all of Canada up very quickly. When it really sunk in for me was seeing the footage and talking to the road captains and everything happening in BC, getting intel that the rest of the country was rising up.
All right, James, I'll see you on the road, brother.
Hey, buddy. Thank you, Andrew.
That's Big Blue there.
A massive Freedom Convoy left the Lower Mainland this morning, beginning the long haul to Ottawa. Industry insiders say the group is very loud, but only represents a small minority of drivers.
The
small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
Being labeled as fringe minority, being labeled as a bigot, racist, and a misogynist when you're leader of your country who's supposed to be serving the country, when he comes out and says stuff like that, it angers you, but yet actually kind of saddens you.
I feel sad. At the same time, I feel like overwhelmed with the drive to fix this.
Canada was coming together. The unity was amazing. The amount of support, like the people standing on the side of roads as we were going through, was just mind-blowing. The small fringe minority, we were not.
I keep listening to this over and over again, and I can't believe that the Prime Minister of an advanced Western country, a democracy, would say this.
He's been vilifying these hardworking people. He's come out and called them publicly more than once racist, misogynist, and he's also said, do we tolerate these people?
These are your own people. This is the language of a tin pot dictator, not the language of a democratically elected leader.
But obviously on the ground, and that's where the disconnection is that wasn't what was coming out. It was love, peace, and unity. The rest of the world saw it, but unfortunately our government didn't.
This was the narrative that was already in place prior to the protesters showing up, prior to the convoy arriving in Ottawa. There was a fair bit of reporting, if you can call it that. This is appearing on national TV. A lot of people are going to tune in, and let's face it, I mean, mainstream media, continues to play an important role as far as a lot of people are concerned. They will not go to the independent media outlets. This is where they get their news from, and they're very insistent on that.
They painted us as bad people when we were hardworking Canadians simply trying to get our message across and being heard by our government.
You've been polling Canadians' attitudes towards not only their governments, but also this restriction. Everyone's trying to figure out, are the truckers tapping into a real issue, or is they, as Justin Trudeau calls them, a fringe group?
I would not call it a fringe group. I would say that based on the polling that we're seeing, most recently 54% of Canadians, and so that includes a lot of those people who rolled up their sleeves to get vaccinated not once, not twice, but 3 times in some cases, are ready for a conversation about whether it's time to start lifting and ending restrictions.
Fundamentally, people thought this was going to be a short-lived thing, 2 days, 3 days max, and they would be out of the city. But boy, were they proven wrong.
While legacy media appeared to turn a blind eye to the grassroots traction of this movement, it appeared to only inspire more Canadians to stand in solidarity with the truckers. Supporters started to line major highways, roadways, and overpasses in unity with the truckers headed to Ottawa.
This is a welcome to Saskatchewan. These are Hutterites that have come out that never show support.
I didn't think it was going to be as big as it was going to be, but then after seeing here, it's like, well, maybe. Then you get down the road and every approach is filled all the way from Albert to Saskatoon. And as you kept getting further and further and further, it's like, wow, this is big.
You're driving along not expecting to see anything, but there's all these lights along the sides of the roads, along all the side roads, and like that's not normally there. Like you just know they're there to support you, so you give a couple of honks.
We have kids that should be in school. We have parents that should be working, and they're out alongside the road on a brisk day, showing us as much support as feasibly possible. People got out of bed at 4 o'clock this morning to show support, and they were there till we left.
Every overpass from there on out was just packed full of people.
standing out in the cold, freezing, cheering on, waiting hours for us. Because I mean, we were never on schedule, never. I don't think we met one city on schedule. It was always at least 2-3 hours behind. So they'd be standing out there, fires lit.
And all of a sudden, everybody's getting out of the vehicles, and you can see them waving, and some of them are jumping around. And there's strobe lights and flashers and fireworks going off.
We had people throwing food in the back of our pickup truck. People running down the streets with coffee to hand through the windows and cheering and screaming and flags.
There was so many people, it was hard to drive in there. They were throwing washer fluid jugs in the back of my truck. All I heard was thump, thump, thump.
See them out there with their children and waving, like it brought tears to a lot of people's eyes.
As a grown man, I've never cried so much in my life. Witnessing the outpour of love, generosity, support that Canadian people have.
It was very emotional, very emotional. We ended up just, we had no idea what we were in for. And when we were driving down the road, every overpass, it was dark, it was snowing like crazy, and there's still people out in the overpasses all the way.
Everywhere we stopped, it's all the same thing.
I want to watch this with you later.
Thank you. We want you. We need you to stay as long as you possibly can.
Almost like something in the air. You could almost feel it. It was very special.
I've never had people cheering for me in my hometown before. Like, wow.
It's an experience that I'll never forget. That's for sure.
It was humbling. Because of what you've seen coming from BC, Alberta, Manitoba, seeing the footage there and the crowds that were meeting those convoys. And then when we left on that Thursday, seeing how many people were meeting us on the bridges and stuff like that, you realized, wow, this is something bigger than we could have ever imagined. I looked over at my wife in the cab and I said, I think we might be making world history. And I think we did.
Canadians weren't the only people witnessing the traction that was generated from this event. As the truckers continued to approach the nation's capital, many other countries around the world joined in with their own protests, media coverage, and even formed their own convoys.
The truckers are in it for the long haul. They're not going to stop until the mandates are lifted. Now, 2 Canadian provinces are dropping pandemic mandates, Alberta and Saskatchewan, and truckers have sparked protest movements worldwide, in the U.S., in Alaska, and possibly from California to Washington.
This is White Global.
Breaker 19.
Australia.
You guys have a departure time? Is
London,
everybody
Germany,
in here right now?
Switzerland. Martin, he's from Switzerland. Heads out to Switzerland. How you doing? USA is just grabbing onto the bear hug like, woo!
Update on the convoy of truckers and other vehicles that encircled Washington, D.C. yesterday. Dozens of trucks, along with minivans, motorcycles, pickup trucks.
Brazil to Italy, France, name it. There's 27 countries right now wearing our flags on convoys from the start date of convoy to now.
I think it really inspired the world. It inspired the world. I mean, you could see it in the messages from people from other countries, for example, also from Germany. People in Germany were very enthusiastic about the Canadian truckers. And I mean, so was I, honestly, frankly. I mean, it was really an inspiring moment.
Just to see Mexico, Belize, all these countries around the world starting their own convoys just, to support the Canadian truck drivers and what we were doing. A bunch of times that just brought tears to my eyes. It's beautiful.
It was just the beginning of a global movement.
Any win for our side anywhere, I think, is a win for all of us.
While the convoy continued to gain international recognition, it also started to highlight the core intent of the movement. to bring Canada together again as a country, to end the division and unite the nation from west to east, to stand in solidarity with each other and accomplish a collective goal.
As a Canadian, there's this west versus east, east versus west, and that we should hate each other. And getting to Ottawa,
connecting both ends of the country, west and east, you know, people from BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Yukon. Like, you know, I've never met somebody from Yukon. I met some pretty interesting people.
Okay, this is it. You know, we've got everybody involved. And this was a first for Canada.
There's something about seeing Alberta and Quebecer and Newfie standing side by side with a hockey stick with a flag, Canadian flag on it. It made me extremely proud.
If nothing more, this movement created hope for our country where unity has been scarce throughout history. For the first time, the Freedom Convoy had brought together Canadians from all walks of life, from all corners of the country, together for a common purpose.
My wife was like, well, what's up with you? And a big smile. I said, well, guys, we made history already, and they're not even here in Ottawa.
If they get to Ottawa, enough of them, this is definitely going to stir something up.
A lot of people may not agree with us right now, but there may come a time when they actually have an issue that affects them, that they don't have the freedom to choose. And if we don't preserve it, we won't have it. For our kids won't have it. Our kids won't be able to live the life they want to or choose to. So this is just for them.
Yeah, we've been out here for hours.
I think we've kind of lost focus that how important the Bill of Rights are for Canadians, and that we just need to present that and make sure that they know that they're hired by the people, for the people.
Throughout the course of the pandemic and associated mandates and lockdowns, an ongoing discussion developed around where constitutional rights hold precedent in matters involving bodily autonomy and the freedom of choice. Feeling that their rights had been infringed upon, the truckers felt it was of vital importance to highlight and spread awareness of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Canadian Bill of Rights, and the International Declaration of Human Rights.
I think this is a real test for our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is only 40 years old, where your Bill of Rights is over 200 years old. And this is the first real test for whether written individual rights and freedoms really mean something in this country.
My name is Vincent Gertie. I've been a member of the Ontario Provincial Police for 32 years, and I retired 7 years ago. Under the Constitution, Section 52 makes it very clear that any law that is created that violates the provisions of the Constitution, which includes the Charter of Rights, is null and void and has no authority whatsoever. A police officer takes an oath to the Constitution of Canada. The Constitution of Canada includes the Canadian Charter of Rights. And so when an officer takes an oath to not only uphold the law, but protect the people of the country, it's something that we don't take lightly.
And once you get on that path of I don't have rights, they're being taken away, and it doesn't feel good, well, what documents do we have in our country that are going to restore my rights? That leads you down the path of, here's our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
One of the things about the convoy was people had watched this for a couple of years on how freedom of expression was being hacked, freedom of mobility was being hacked, freedom of religion was being hacked by the government. And folks just finally said, enough. We need to push back here.
That document gives us that right to stand up. It should be honored and respected by our government so much that we shouldn't even have to stand up and defend it.
On the surface, good laws. We have a charter, we have a constitution, we have a criminal code, but it's not being applied equally across the system, and that generates anger and division.
When mandates come out that are in clear violation of the Charter of Rights, the Bill of Rights, the International Declaration of Human Rights, that's something that should be disregarded.
This is another way to create division in the country, is to unequally apply the law against one group and not another, and it creates anger and it creates partition, and here we are again.
The Freedom Convoy created a platform for further discussion on the foundation of this debate that had scarcely been available to the public eye. Citizens continue to lose their jobs in their respected fields due to enforced vaccine mandates, which encourage dialogue between those affected and the general public.
My name is Dr. Julie Panesi. I have a PhD in philosophy from Western University, and I taught at Huron College at Western University for a number of years until I was terminated for not complying with the vaccine mandate. And I now work for the Democracy Fund as their ethics scholar. There is no other concept that has garnered more attention from medical ethicists and academic ethicists over the last maybe 40 years, especially within the field of medical ethics, than coercion, trying to understand what it is, how to avoid it, and how to develop policies that protect people from it, both within healthcare and more broadly, governmental policies. And then you might say, well, why is that important? Why is it so important that we're not coerced? And my very strong belief is that to try to coerce a person is to fail to recognize and to fail to treat that person as being what he or she most naturally is.
If you're familiar with the laws that you're enforcing within the course of your duties, sometimes there are times where there is conflict, and sometimes that conflict comes from your command staff. And ultimately, you're going to have to make a decision. Within the mind, you'll know the difference between right and wrong, and you need to speak up, and you need to say, that is wrong. But you also need to be able to justify it.
If you look at millennia of human history, it is not at all surprising that the vast majority of people will comply their way towards atrocity. That's not surprising at all. That's what human nature is. We're tribal in nature. What's surprising are these outliers, the people who say, I'm going to step out of the shadow of the crowd. There are things that are more important to me than the comfort of what the group can give me. And I will hold on to my integrity no matter what losses may come, even if that's my life. And these are the people who gathered in Ottawa for a month, and they would have stayed a lot longer than that if they had to, I have no doubt about it.
So who went to Ottawa and why did they go? As the convoy neared its destination, it grew in scale, and participants began sharing their purpose and reasoning for joining the movement. For many, it was so important that they were willing to uproot their lives without notice.
So at the end of the day, when people ask me, why did you support the convoy? It's not so much supporting the convoy, which I did, but it's so much trying to bring attention to people that said, right across this country, people are angry, they're frustrated, they're losing their jobs, they recognize the government is failing. Somebody needs to do something. So that's kind of how I got into it. That's why I believe at the end of the day, it was necessary to support the convoy. And as the convoy went along, a whole lot of other guys stepped in the same way. So it was good.
If I knock it down to the absolute bare bones, my kids and my wife. I'm very fortunate that I've got a supportive wife and a strong wife, and we had a good heart-to-heart, and I just said, I have to see it. I mean, if I go there and I'm proved wrong, shame on me.
We were raised up as three brothers. We were raised up to stand up. when we saw something wasn't right. And being family men, taking care of our families and putting a lot of emphasis on their well-being, seeing what was going on in Quebec specifically, seeing our young people shutting down and crashing and committing suicide, we knew something had to be done. So when we saw this glimpse of hope coming out from the West, we knew that this was a good option and was worth putting time and effort and trying to help these people.
Upon nightfall, all 3 routes of the Freedom Convoy made the final descent towards the nation's capital. Police, protesters, and the city of Ottawa all prepared for its arrival. Convoy participants drove through what might have been the most emotional stretch of the drive yet. Canadians, undeterred by the freezing temperatures, lined the highways with signs and fireworks in a show of support. As the country and the world watched this story unfold, there were some expectations of what this demonstration would look like. But nobody could have predicted what would happen over the next 22 days.
I think it changed a lot of people's perspective.
You can watch all the news you want, and you won't get to capture what it actually was.
I don't think that they realized that we weren't leaving until the mandates were removed.
I'm heading out on this traveler's road, leaving all behind to revive my soul.
Jake, just seen that right now. I am really hoping to, my friend. I'm trying to get a few things sorted out right now to figure that out. Holy smokes, Robert. I will take you up on that offer big time, my friend. I really appreciate. Look at this community has so much to give to everybody. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I will definitely take you up on that offer. I would love to meet you and have you come give me a hand here. I used to do a lot of live streaming and that just through Instagram, but as you guys know, you can't have the mic and the camera and all that stuff hooked up and have like a professional setup. So I just ordered all this stuff. And I'm just kind of getting rolling right now. So I can, learn how to do all this. And I haven't dived into OBS yet. I'm going to be doing this kind of stuff on the weekend. To be honest with you, I've been so busy just trying to get this out there for everyone and doing a couple other interviews that I haven't had much time to learn, but I plan on spending some time this weekend to do some learning and whatnot.
Okay, you want to give us another one? Come on, give us another one. There we go. Good morning to everybody, right? Hey, give her another one. Come on, let's go. Give her another one.
Sloan's post divided hockey fans, with one supporter tweeting, "I grew up watching Hockey Night and to drag queen." Have I? No? Okay, Justin Trudeau. Il donne un booster every year if you're healthy. You might want it protected.
Look at the window. She's so lost without you. I'm like sitting in there and all I hear is and I'm like, what the hell is that noise? What would you do without her? You should hear her when you come home. Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna tell this lady tomorrow. I'll say, well, when you moved up here, all these were taken down. They were thrown behind the fridge in the corners. They were. They were. They were
already broken, but I was getting accustomed to they were always down.
I mean, you don't have to wait for it to dry before you do it, do you? Don't make much sense. Honey wants to come see you. I didn't let her out there. It was pretty muddy, eh? Look at her. Oh, he doesn't want to come up. Come here. Diesel up. Diesel, what's this? Diesel, come here. Who's that? Up. Diesel, come here. Diesel up. Okay, stop, dogs. Looks like we're going to be back at it any second now. Felt like a long break.
Order à l'ordre. The commission is reconvened. La commission reprend.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon. Okay, we're ready to go?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Chief Party, just before the lunch break, I was asking you questions about the meeting on February the 9th.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to finish that off by taking you to one more document of that meeting. This is not your notes, but someone at the OPS was also taking notes. So if I could call up document number OPS 30-14454, please. Page 138, please. So if we if we go to the bottom of the page, please. Do you see a reference from the chief that starts with, there we go, we can, so the chief, the former chief of the OPS, Mr. Slowly, apparently asked the question, we can add the info that was provided by the RCMP, but we haven't agreed not to proceed with our plan for tonight. And then he asked, are we still separate entities, or are you folding into our incident command system? There's a notation that the OPP said, yes, we should, I think it's probably, yes, we should probably fold into the OPS command structure. Do you recall having that kind of exchange?
I do recall an exchange about working under their command.
Yes.
In an integrated command structure. That's kind of how it does work. But there was some clear differences of opinion, I think, in terms of what integration would look like, which I'm sure we'll get to as we go through. But I had no issues. We had some very loose talk around where we would work. The location that we were situated at had significant capacity to expand. And that also became a contentious issue because it took some time to even get us to work in the same area, which proved to add layers of difficulty to it. Eventually it did happen and it became quite seamless.
Right. And this is also consistent with what you've been telling us all along, that you were there to offer help, but not to take over.
We were explicitly, I was directed from my commissioner that we are not going to Ottawa to take over. The chief and the police jurisdiction still have primacy over this event. We're there to assist them, hopefully in an integrated and unified fashion.
And this may be a question that's unrelated to the February 9th meeting, but since we've heard so much about the Hendon report, I'm just curious, were you one of the recipients of the Hendon report at around January, February of this year?
As a regional commander, I was receiving the Hendon reports.
Were you reading them?
Reading them, and just oftentimes there was aspects that were just going through the changes and the change, because I knew it was internally produced by the OPP Intelligence Bureau, and attended briefings as required on significant changes that would occur.
Okay. So with that, if I could now take you to the event in the subsequent days following the February 9th meeting. Did work continue on February the 10th in terms of working on this plan, a new plan from the integrated planning group, or making improvement to the OPS plan that you were shown on the 9th?
I appreciate that when you look at from an appearance perspective, they look like very different plans. At its core, the plan that we developed was a build on and support of to complement the plan that the concept that they had in place, which was all strategically directed in the same way about ending the protests and bringing Ottawa back to a state of normalcy.
And that makes sense because you came to offer support.
Correct.
And you asked what they had so that you could build on it.
Correct, sir.
If I could take you to the next document, OPP 404283. So if we could shrink the page so we can see the entire page, please. So this is a document that we received from the OPP. It looks like a draft document of some sort. At the bottom, it says it's prepared by the Integrated Planning Cell, RCMP, OPP, you know, those police services that you talked about earlier. I want to take you to
V4F was made aware that a potential case of statement witness tampering may be an upcoming issue concerning the Public Order Emergency Commission. This commission, often referred to as the Public Inquiry into the Emergencies Act, was due to begin hearing testimony on the 19th of September, 2022. That date has been delayed for approximately 1 month. The objective of the inquiry is to inquire into the circumstances that led to the declaration of emergency that was in place from February 14th to the 23rd, 2022, and the measures taken for dealing with the
OPS
emergency.
operation
The
at
stated
that time
mandate
was
of the Public
not
Order Emergency Commission is
intelligence-led.
the Commission will examine
Not
and
in the way,
assess the
strictly,
basis
that I
for the
would
government's
have
decision to
anticipated. No,
declare
I
a
do
public
not
order
believe,
emergency. The
when
circumstances
you
that
look
led
at
to the
intelligence
declaration
resolution,
and the
you're looking at your
appropriateness
threat
and
assessments, your
effectiveness
risk
of the measures
assessments,
selected by the government
how you
to
can
deal
affect
with
some
the
positive
then existing
change using
situation.
that intelligence. They were in crisis mode, and in crisis mode, I did not feel that they were using the intelligence to look at the broader event, to see about how they could dismantle this event peacefully.
And when your group was trying to build on whatever plan that you saw on the 9th, what was your objective, like in terms of incorporating any available intelligence that was available to the group?
Well, two of the key things that we did as a team is I arranged intelligence and PLT briefings for my team at the highest level. So Superintendent Morris and his entire team joined us. Inspector Marcel Baudin and a number of both, I believe, OPP and OPS PLT joined us. We wanted their perspective on the lay of the land, the current intelligence, what we know, what we don't know, what are the gaps. And
the original
likewise
source
with the
provided
PLT
information
in
that a
terms
person
of
with
how
a
are things
significant
going,
role in law
what can
enforcement
be
was being
improved
pressured
upon,
to make a false
what
statement
is-
that would
what
be
levels
of
authority do we
significant
have
interest to the
engage,
Commission.
what
A
is the
secondary
plan moving
source
forward?
provided
Is there
information
opportunities,
not on the witness, but
that
rather
we
on
can
unusual
capitalize on
activities surrounding the Commission.
to persuade some of the protesters to leave on their own accord, et cetera. So we received those briefings. I wanted my planners and my team, all the tacticians, I wanted them to be fully aware in that point in time what we were doing. We did have subsequent and additional briefings throughout from those entities just to make sure that if there's any change that we might need to pivot to adjust to those changes.
Right, and I think I saw some references in your notes that on the 10th, you got some input from Marcel Baudin. Was he the person from the OPP in charge of the PLT group?
Marcel, he's got a background, he's an inspector with our Indigenous Policing Bureau, and he has a background, yes, in provincial liaison.
Right, so on the same document that's on the screen, if we go down further, we see a section with the PLT. So there we go. And Chief Party, you see there's not complete, I assume, because it's a draft document, but there's some information
that a person with a significant role in law enforcement was being pressured to make a false statement that would be of significant interest to the Commission. A secondary source provided information not on the witness, but rather on unusual activities surrounding the Commission.
In broad terms, the kind of information you were looking for in order to inform the new approach.
It does. You need to know the sentiment of the community, what the desired outcomes are. PLT do amazing work at ensuring that they understand all sides, and that's what good negotiators do, and they are just that. They are negotiators. They're trained to do what they do, to understand the perspective of all sides, to ensure that information around expectations around the law are properly
information not on the witness, but rather on unusual activities surrounding the Commission.
To improve and build those relationships, build that trust with people, so that what they say, they know that they can take what they say to the bank, that they're going to be following through with what they say.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I could take you back to your will say, Madam Clerk, OPP 450792. I believe it was on this day, February 10th, Chief Party, that one of the subject matter experts from the RCMP, Darwin Tetrode, prepared a concept of operations that was based on the information that you were gathering. So if we go to page 5 of this document, I want to go down to the bullet that starts with on the 10th of February. There we go. You see this bullet that tells us that Sergeant Tetra was preparing this concept of operations based on the totality of the information that were getting from the OPS, but more importantly, intelligence that would support a systematic and safe action plan to dismantle the entire protest zone. So does this also refer to something you told us earlier about not doing things block by block, but to have start to finish of the entire protest zone?
That's correct.
If I could take you to the next document, I believe this is your notes, OPP 401792. So this is still February the 10th. And if we go to page 28, the time I'm looking for is 1925. There we go. You have a telephone call with, looks like Deputy Harkins. And there's a reference. Can we make the look at more of the page? Oh, there we go. I think go down a little bit, please. Obstacles with OPS still. Can you read this? These are your notes, right?
Obstacles with OPS still exist at the chief level. However, we're working effectively with his rank and file.
So first of all, why are you saying that there are still obstacles at the chief level?
Well, we're at this point, we still don't have their plan. It was a frequent made request to get what they had, to get access to their people, and the replies were all, we're waiting for the chief.
And the second part where it says we're working effectively with the rank and file.
Yes.
Who are these rank and file?
Everyone from their command team, their strategic command, Deputy Ferguson, Chris Rayome, those that were sent to our unit to assist with the planning. We didn't have their planners embedded with us until some days later, but we were back and forth with them as well.
Mm-hmm. If we go to the next day now, so on the same, these are your notes, but we go to page 32, please. And the time I'm looking for is 12:30. So there are 2 points being made here. Perhaps you can read those better.
Yeah, so the first point is we don't know what resources are deployed here before and beyond any request that we have made. We have been coordinating, and this was that bullet is in essence in reference to silos. Others are doing something. We all need to be out of those silos. If we're asking for something, you're asking for something, are we asking for the same thing? We need to break those down. Mm-hmm. It was a constant pressure. We were asking for a lot of resources here. Mm-hmm. So we needed to ensure that we were effective in our requests. Right. The second bullet says, anything sent to the OPPOC from the Chief's Executive Office, can we get that, please? And those were some requests that the chief had made. So can we just please get access to what requests have been made, what replies have been received? He just said he too was very frustrated. I asked if the chief's executive officer was looking after resources. He advised that he was working on getting that information for me.
Okay. Now on that day, February the 11th, you also attended a meeting with the group, the integrated planning group. That might have happened actually earlier that day. And I want to take you to the document, the minutes of that meeting. Is a document provided by the OPP, so OPP 401837. And I want to take you to page 5, near the top. Oh no, it's just not enough memory. Maybe while, oh, there we go. Okay, so if we can go to page 5, please. Right, so there's a reference to something you said at that meeting. We're here to build a plan to support our partners. but we have no information. Can deploy when we don't know what we're deploying to. We have an OPS plan, but it does not give us enough information to deploy 500 officers without a more comprehensive plan. Intelligence picture will inform this, and so on. There's a reference to 500 officers. Tell us more about that.
Back on our February 9th meeting, I think it was Sergeant or Staff Sergeant LeBlanc from the OPS did provide us a bit of a breakdown in terms of their plan and intersections, what the numbers they needed. And that number was 516, if I'm not mistaken, from the February 9th meeting. We were trying to understand that. We later learned that it was based on a 3-shift rotation. Most organizations work on a 2-shift rotation. So the needs, again, I mentioned earlier, we corrected some of the math, but it's around that number at that time. And that was based on their concept, without duties assigned, but based on their concept of operations, we would need they would need 516 officers to maintain this on a 24/7 cycle.
I see. Now, let me take you to your will say at page 6, please. You notice that I'm taking you to lots of documents. Sometimes these contemporaneous records help tell the story.
Excuse me.
So if we go to page 6 at 1645, so scroll down a little bit, please. So 1645, that's 4:45 p.m. Our team presented our proposed plan to senior command in the RCMP and the OPP with significant support. This plan was a detailed concept of operations for which our team would build the entire POU plan. However, it still relied heavily on inject from the OPS planning team. Now, I suppose that goes back to something you told us earlier, that you were building on what was given you, that you thought was inadequate for the purposes of resolving the protest situation. And by this time at 4:45, you had something to present to the senior command. What was that proposed plan?
Well, it was the plan that we actually executed in the end. That concept of operations was developed at that stage, and with a POU plan that was going to be very detailed in terms of the number of resources that were going to be needed, which came to fruition, that same 800 number I mentioned earlier. We talked about everything from communication to restoring trust and confidence in the Ottawa Police, to responding to the narrative, to change the narrative, because the narrative certainly was not reflective of what was actually going on the ground, what we could see on the ground. So it was that all-encompassing concept of operation and plan to dismantle the protests effectively, start to finish.
Okay. If we go further down on this, okay. So you see the bullet that starts with Superintendent Liu and I presented the plan at a high level to her, her referring to the person in the bullet before, which is Deputy Chief Ferguson. You presented it to her and she immediately voiced her full support. She preferred, however, that she be permitted time to present it to the chief, and we agreed to prepare and forward a slide deck for her use, which was completed, and that we would be available regardless of time to answer questions. So you're making yourself available to answer questions, but you're waiting for her to get an answer from the chief. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, so we presented it and her response was very, very favorable, which we felt good about. And I was prepared to go to the chief myself if necessary. But based on the dynamic that we've been seeing and the feedback, we trusted her judgment, and she felt that it would be best for her to present it. It was, it was late into the evening, about 9:30ish when we finally got a deck to her. Hoping that we would get a response, probably not that night, but certainly by first thing in the morning.
Now, you may or may not know this, but we heard from Deputy Chief Ferguson yesterday that she was actually off that day.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that.
I think I found out during the process that she was, but
right. But she still spoke to you.
She
at around
answered our
9 or
calls
10.
always. Yes.
Yeah. So that was February the 11th, late at night, and then the next day. So we're going into February the 12th now. At 11:45 a.m. on the 12th, you placed a phone call to Chief Slowly. So the two of you had a conversation. Tell us about that conversation, please.
Well, if I could, just prior to
Yes,
that,
yes.
I mean, I put in the salient points here, but earlier in the day, I made an outreach to see if we've gotten any response back from Chief Slowly on the plan, and whether or not it'd be a good time for me to call him. And I was told it was until advised time to call.
I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this question.
A little later.
Will we see some type of evidence in the future? Well, only time will tell.
Right. But I made that call to him. And, you know, when I reflect on my notes and how quickly I was writing, it was contemporaneous in that I was writing the note as I was speaking with them.
Only ask this specific officer this
Yeah,
question.
that was the context of the
Will we
conversation.
see some type of evidence in the future? Well, only time will
The
tell.
slide deck, and you had an opportunity to take a look at it, your thoughts on it. His concern was around what does integration look like? Where do we fit? How does it fit in other theaters of operation?
Now, I'm not going to
and whatnot. And
Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this question.
Once again,
Will we see some type of evidence in the future? Well, only time will tell.
We would be green lighted to move ahead.
Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this question. Will we see some type of evidence in the future? Well, only time will
but
tell.
Staying on this call for the moment.
Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this question.
Looking to work in a more integrated fashion.
Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but
resources
I'm not going to speculate anything
where needed.
Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this
he
question.
Wasn't sure what was agreed to yet as to how that integration was to happen. So he suggested a call. I wanted to ask you if you have specific.
Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this question. Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this question. Now, I'm not going to
best tool in my 36-year career to ensure that I capture the
speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this question. Now, I'm not going to speculate anything, but I find it particularly interesting that Freedom Court Counsel Brendan Miller only asked this specific officer this
at around the time that
Now, I'm
you were
not going
having
to
this conversation with
speculate
the former
anything, but I
chief,
find it
I suppose
particularly
your other
interesting that
members of
Freedom
your
Court
team
Counsel
were having a
Brendan
conversation
Miller
with
only
Superintendent
asked this
Bernie.
specific officer this question.
And
Now,
what
I'm not going
did
to
you find
speculate
out
anything,
from
but I find it
other members of
particularly
your team
interesting that
about
Freedom
what
Court
they
Counsel
spoke
Brendan
to Bernie?
Miller only asked this specific officer this question.
Okay, so they
Now,
got
I'm
the
not going to
message
speculate
that they were
anything,
good
but
to
I
go
find it
while
particularly
you were speaking to chief, who asked for a further meeting or briefing.
Right. So I felt that maybe there was some obvious miscommunication going on.
Will we see some type of evidence?
You know, that we did actually require that meeting with the chief. I'm going to lean to the response that I got directly from Chief Slowly that a follow-up meeting was required. And that follow-up meeting did occur with a detailed overview of the plan. So I just felt that maybe Superintendent Bernie misunderstood, or it was obviously inaccurate.
Right. So if we go further down, that meeting that finally happened.
Will we see some type of
took place in the
evidence that brings
afternoon. So first of all,
questions?
at 1400, so 2 p.m., you placed a call to Deputy Chief Bell upon learning that the former chief would like a briefing on the plan.
Yes.
And so you suggested, at Chief Party, you suggested at 3:30, right?
Yes.
And then at 3:04, you got a call from Deputy Bell, who apologized, but said that the meeting has already started, and the chief was insisting that it happened now. Is that still your recollection?
It is.
And then a few minutes later, at 3:10, you and I guess you joined. When you say we, I assume it's you and the members of your team.
The key members of our planning group. Specifically, I wanted the subject matter expert to present the plan.
Yeah.
I introduced it, and then to have the subject matter expert.
Will we see some type of evidence that?
Phil Liu was on the call. I can't remember exactly who.
Will we see some type of evidence that brings questions to
So I'd like to ask you what you wrote here at 15:10 about the third line down, the end of the second line, the tone of the chief's comments.
Will we see some type of evidence that brings questions about Patricia Ferguson's integrity? Well, only time will tell.
To leave the call, to allow him to speak privately with his team first. He was blunt in saying no, he would get to us momentarily. What was this about?
He was having discussions that were separate and apart from our purpose to be at that meeting. And it was really direct. Heads were down. You could sense, you could feel the tension over the video.
You see some type of evidence that brings questions about Patricia Ferguson's integrity? Well, only time will tell.
Also spoke up. We just felt that perhaps.
You see some type of evidence that brings questions about Patricia Ferguson's integrity? Well, only time will tell.
And he said, no, I'll get to you next. Just so I'm getting to you.
You see some type of evidence that brings questions about Patricia Ferguson's integrity? Well, only time will tell.
That there was a presentation of the slides, right?
Yes.
And so if we scroll down a little bit, the last sentence of this bullet, do you see
some type of evidence that brings only time will tell.
The plan was reducing
some
the
type of evidence
protesters'
that brings
footprint
questions about Patricia
through
Ferguson's
compliance,
integrity? Well,
and that ensuring
only time will
safety
tell.
above
See some type
everything
of
was
evidence that
factored
brings
in at all stages. So it looks like when you said key,
questions about
some
Patricia
emphasis was put on that point. Can you elaborate?
It was. I mean, this obviously was a significant event in our nation's capital, having a significant impact.
Is that a recording playing in the background of yourself?
But we also will
I don't know what's going on.
to ensure that what our actions do help rebuild that trust and confidence in the police. It goes back to our mission and ensuring that safety is built into the mission. And that was a key component.